Chapter 38. Alright, even if you say it, will father believe it? Father will only think that I'm narrow-minded and instigated Yarrow Mo Wan to make a mistake so I can get rid of her. Yarrow Sulwan felt a headache coming on and rubbed her forehead. This Yarrow Mo Wan, if I had known this would happen, I would have made her drink a bowl of red crane and sent her and her lowly mother to reunite with Yarrow Mo Shin in the underworld. Just as Do Xianglan was gritting her teeth, Yarrow Mo Wan walked into Pure Flower's palace innocently. Wan greets Di Mother. What is this red crane that Di Mother just mentioned? Before entering Pure Flower's palace, Yarrow Mo Wan saw Cai Ying leave with Yarrow Yu and ordered Liu Xing and Ting Yu to follow. Then she stopped outside the palace for a while before walking in. You, how long have you been here? Do Xianglan looked at Yarrow Mo Wan who was walking over in shock and asked in panic. You just got here. I just heard Di Mother say something about Crane's crown red. I think she also mentioned Moan's mother. What were you guys talking about? Yarrow Moan blinked her clear eyes as her cherry lips curved beautifully. None of your business. My skin is itching from not being hit for a few days. Do Xianglan was just about to get up and teach Yarrow Mo Wan a lesson when Yarrow Sulwan stopped her. Nothing, just chatting. Mother, Wan has done well. His Majesty is obedient to her. Yarrow Sulwan intentionally gave her mother a look to warn her mother that Yarrow Mo Wan was different from before and that she absolutely couldn't hit her. Do Xianglan suddenly realized Yarrow Mo Wan's current identity and couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Fortunately, she hadn't slapped her. His Majesty is very good, loving Mo Wan like mother. He even said that if anyone dares to bully Mo Wan, he'll chop off their fingers. Yarrow Mo Wan's heart trembled when she saw Do Xianglan's hateful expression. Her younger sister must have eaten quite a few slaps in the first half of her life. There was plenty of time in the future. She had plenty of time to play with them. At the side, Do Xianglan heard this and instinctively retracted her hands into her sleeves. Her face was purple. Mo Wan, why have you come? Yarrow Sulwan asked gently, restraining her temper. Ever since returning from Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Sulwan knew that she couldn't offend this fool for now. Once His Majesty got tired of playing, Yarrow Mo Wan's death would come. That's what Ting Yu said earlier. It's been so long since I've seen Di Mother, Moan really misses you. Yarrow Moan's brows curved, but her smile made Do Xianglan feel uncomfortable all over. You will miss me. Do Xianglan muttered and snorted coldly. What did Di Mother say? Moan didn't hear it. Yarrow Moan walked around Yarrow Sulwan and directly walked in front of Do Xianglan, scaring Do Xianglan into hurriedly retreating in fear. Do Xianglan believed that if Yarrow Moan wasn't an idiot, even if she had Yarrow Sulwan's protection, she still wouldn't necessarily be completely safe. No. Nothing. Do Xianglan dodged the question. Even though Yarrow Sulwan and Do Xianglan both overtly and covertly reminded Yarrow Moan that she wasn't welcome, Yarrow Moan still lingered in Pure Flower's palace. Only around the time of the 5th hour did she stretch and walk out of Pure Flower's palace. That little bastard is finally gone. I really don't understand why His Majesty would dote on her. Do Xianglan sighed fiercely and said resentfully. Don't say that daughter didn't warn you. His Majesty has been very protective of her these days, so don't provoke her if you have nothing better to do. If you really anger His Majesty, daughter won't be able to save you completely, warned Yarrow Sulwan. Chapter 39. Niang Niang. It's bad. Cai Ying stopped in front of Yarrow Sulwan, panting. Her forehead was covered in sweat and her face was as pale as paper. What's wrong? Didn't I tell you to bring Yarrow Yu to play? Where's Yarrow Yu? Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Cai Ying with a frown, but Yarrow Yu didn't come back. This servant also doesn't know. This servant was just playing hide and seek with young master a while ago. I don't know why, but after playing and playing, I lost sight of him. Cai Ying looked at Yarrow Sulwan with trepidation as she nervously reported. What? You lost him? You can't even look after a child. What's the point of raising you? Yarrow Sulwan abruptly stood up and glared at Cai Ying. Forget it, forget it. If he's lost, then he's lost. Maybe he fell into the river himself, That'll save me the trouble. At the side, Do Xianglan didn't care. She believed in her bones that between Yarrow Sulwan and Yarrow Yu, Yarrow Zhenting would definitely choose her daughter. What are you just standing there for? Hurry and send someone to look for him. If something goes wrong, just watch how I'll take care of you. Yarrow Sulwan berated Cai Ying harshly and turned to look towards her mother. It's not as simple as you think. Anyway, forget it. There's no point in telling you. Just wait, we'll go back together after we find Yarrow Yu. Yarrow Sulwan looked helplessly at her mother. With you, the Imperial Gui Fei, standing here, I don't believe your father can do anything to me. I'll go back first. It's best if we can't find him, but even if we find him, don't send him back. Do Xianglan had already held back quite a bit of anger from Yarrow Moen. Do Xianglan had already walked out of Pure Flower's palace without waiting for Yarrow Sulwan to speak. At dinner, Yi Junqing, who had disappeared for a day, finally showed himself. It wasn't that he was willing, but his stomach was really empty and he was very hungry. Who is he? Yi Junqing walked into the main hall in a white robe and just happened to see Yarrow Yu playing with Fluffy at the table. Moen's younger brother. Perhaps it was because they were in the same boat. Yarrow Moen had liked Yarrow Yu from the first time she saw him. That obedient appearance was exactly the same as her younger sister. Morsheen never mentioned that she had a younger brother. Yi Junqing clearly doubted Yarrow Moen's words. So eldest sister still has some reservations about Prince, don't you? Yarrow Moen replied indifferently as she looked towards Yi Junqing with her beautiful eyes. Yarrow Moen wanted to defame herself. She wanted Yi Junqing to know that the woman in his heart wasn't perfect and flawless. In that case, would the love be a little less? This prince really suspects that you might be Morsheen's biological younger sister. Yi Junqing's clear eyes turned piercingly cold. His gaze towards Yarrow Moen became indistinguishable. It's the real deal. Yarrow Yu, come eat. Yarrow Moen smiled faintly, then pulled Yarrow Yu over and held him in her arms, feeding him mouthful by mouthful. At the side, Fluffy seemed to sense the presence of danger. After leaving Yarrow Yu's embrace, she hastily shrunk back to Yarrow Moen's feet and stared at Yi Junqing vigilantly. Prince always has that icy expression. Even Fluffy is scared of you, teased Yarrow Moen as she glanced at Yi Junqing. That's because it feels guilty. Yi Junqing suddenly realized that he was arguing with a cat. He immediately withdrew his gaze and sat down in front of Yarrow Moen to pick up his chopsticks. Older sister Wanna, older brother is so handsome. Yarrow Yu looked towards Yi Junqing with a brilliant smile. That's because you're still young and haven't seen much of the world. Once you grow up, you'll realize that that face is very ordinary. Yarrow Moen used a handkerchief to wipe away the rice on Yarrow Yu's face as she lied. On the other side of the table, Yi Junqing's expression stiffened. He took a long time to calm himself down before continuing to eat. A good man doesn't argue with a woman, Yi Junqing comforted himself. Older sister Wanna, Yarrow Yu wants to grow up faster. Yarrow Yu's voice sounded a little disappointed and his eyes became watery. Why? Yarrow Moen set down her bowl and placed Yarrow Yu on the chair next to her. Chapter 40. Cough cough. Cough cough cough. At the side, Yi Junqing, who was eating, couldn't stop coughing. He looked towards Yarrow Moen, his eyes clearly saying that women's hearts were the most vicious. Surprisingly, Yarrow Moen didn't retort. She just looked at Yarrow Yu, her gaze as sharp as an eagle's. Remember older sister Wanna's words. You can't wait until you grow up to protect mother, because mother can't wait, understand? Her heart felt like it was being stabbed with a small knife. Yarrow Yu still had a chance, unlike her. Even if she wanted to risk her life to protect her mother, she no longer had the chance. Yarrow Yu will remember. Older sister Wanna, do you think it would be better to change the hairpin into an embroidery needle? Yarrow Yu blinked his bright eyes as he asked this seriously. Ien, this child is worth teaching. Yarrow Moen nodded with a smile. Yarrow Yu was father's favorite, so no matter how excessive he was, no one in the residence, including Do Xianglan, would dare to punish him. She could only hope that this would make Su Mu's life in the Prime Minister residence a bit easier. On the other side of the table, the corners of Yi Junqing's lips twitched. He had to use one hand to hold the corner of the table so that he wouldn't fall over from the shock of the conversation between the two people in front of him. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, after morning court session, the first thing Yi Hongyi did was impatiently rush over to see his porcelain doll. What is our Wana doing? When Yi Hongyi walked into Guan Osprey Palace, he saw Yarrow Moen putting all of the pastries on the table into a cloth bag. Father likes to eat the pastries from the palace. In the past, second older sister would often bring back pastries from the palace for father and Di mother to eat. At the time, Wana really envied second older sister. Now that Wana is also living in the palace, I can bring pastries back to the residence. Yarrow Moen answered Yi Hongyi's question seriously as she packed the pastries. The smile on Yi Hongyi's face froze for a moment. Yarrow Moen knew this would happen because she knew that the pastries from the palace could only be made for His Majesty and the imperial concubines. Without His Majesty's reward, the outside officials couldn't eat them, nor could they eat them. Yarrow Sulwan dared to bring them out and Yarrow Enchanting dared to eat them. This was a huge taboo. Of course, it wasn't important whether this was true or not. What was important was that Yi Hongyi believed it. Your Majesty, aren't you happy? If Your Majesty isn't happy, then Wana won't take it. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Hongyi blankly. As she spoke, she was about to take out the pastries from the cloth bag. Zhen isn't unhappy. Since Wana has such filial piety, Zhen will send someone to deliver these pastries to Yarrow Xiongfu. There's no need for you to personally deliver them. Yi Hongyi restrained the coldness in his eyes and smiled as he took the cloth bag from Yarrow Moen's hands. But Wana also wants to go back to the Prime Minister residence to take a look. Moreover, little brother is here. Wana has to take him back to the residence. Father will definitely be worried to death if he can't see little brother. As Yarrow Moen spoke, her gaze shifted towards Yarrow Yu who was playing with Fluffy. Only then did Yi Hongyi notice that there was such a boy in the hall. This is your biological younger brother? Yi Hongyi lifted his brows as he looked towards Yarrow Moen. He had never heard that Yarrow Enchanting had a son. No wonder this old man didn't attend morning court today. He must have gone crazy looking for his son. Chapter 41. Wan also misses Your Majesty. Yarrow Moen nodded happily and gave Yi Hongyi a light peck on the cheek before putting away the pastries. Yi Junqing, who had just walked in, happened to see this scene. He had to admit that Yarrow Moen's side profile was very similar to Mo Xin's. Mo Xin had given up everything for Yi Hongyi in this life, but in the end, they hadn't been able to grow old together. Back then, at Rippling Waves Pavilion, he had accompanied her to look up at the blue dome of heaven. She had once said that she had chosen the right star for him. When he saw the light in her eyes, Yi Junqing had finally decided to send troops to rescue the trapped Yi Hongyi. WNOR, did you forget about Juanqing's breakfast? When Yi Hongyi saw Yi Junqing, he hooked a finger around Yarrow Moen's nose as he smiled affectionately. Ah, you're here. Wana thought you weren't going to eat anymore. What should I do? Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Junqing in realization. Ever since he found out that Yarrow Moen was pretending to be stupid, Yi Junqing always resisted seeing Yarrow Moen's naive appearance. This subject brother will take his leave. Yi Junqing ignored Yarrow Moen and cupped his hands to leave Guan Osprey Palace. However, he was stopped by Yi Hongyi. Junqing, Wana is returning to the Prime Minister's residence today. We still have political matters to take care of, so help us protect Wana. Don't let anyone bully our darling. Yi Hongyi seemed to speak lightly, but in reality, there was an undeniable dignity in his words. This subject, Your Majesty, is the best. Take these. When Yarrow Moen saw that Yi Junqing was about to refuse, she suddenly walked over to Yi Junqing with the cloth bag in her hand and impolitely shoved the bag into Yi Junqing's hand. Your Majesty, then Wana is leaving. Yarrow Moen turned and pulled Yarrow Yu over before leaving Guan Osprey Palace. When Yi Junqing saw the oil seeping out of the cloth bag and rubbing against his body, he suddenly had the urge to beat someone up. He quickly chased after her. At the sides, Liu Xing and Ting Yu bowed respectfully before following him out of Guan Osprey Palace. As Yi Hongyi watched Yi Junqing leave, a cold glint flashed through his eyes. Prime Minister Yarrow's residence was also the place where Yi Junqing and Yarrow Morshin had first met. If he had to go back to that place again, his heart would definitely ache. Even if he couldn't kill Yi Junqing right now, he still didn't want him to live comfortably. Since it was not an official trip, there was no need to make it public. On the way, Yarrow Moen had Liu Xing drive the carriage. Ting Yu took Yarrow Yu to the carriage while she and Yi Junqing sat in the other carriage. You're good at lying, and you're even better at playing dumb. I really don't know how Morshin could have a younger sister like you. If it weren't for the fact that he was holding a cloth bag, Yi Junqing would rather die than sit in the same car as Yarrow Moen. Isn't that good? At least His Majesty likes it, replied Yarrow Moen indifferently. His Majesty likes you because you're Morshin's little sister. In his opinion, Morshin was incomparably good and had done everything for Yi Hongyi, so there was no reason for Yi Hongyi not to love her. At that time, every time he saw Morshin, he would see traces of happiness on her face. As for that confession, Yi Junqing was certain that Morshin had willingly left it behind in order to ensure the stability of Yi Hongyi's empire. So that's what your highness thinks. Ha! As expected, your highness is intelligent and far-sighted, unparalleled in this world. Yarrow Moen laughed in spite of herself as she looked towards Yi Junqing. Her fingers gradually tightened in her sleeves, only stopping when she felt pain. Chapter 42. Third Miss is back. Oh, isn't this young master? This lowly one will go report to master right away. The servant's eyes lit up when he saw Yarrow Yu. No, WN wants to give father a surprise. Things were different now. The servant who had never looked at Yarrow Moen properly before didn't dare go against her wishes now. In front of the residence, Yi Junqing looked up at the words Prime Minister Yarrow Residence and his eyes filled with deep sorrow. When he first saw Morshin, he knew that he wouldn't be able to escape in this lifetime. You guys really don't have good eyes. Hurry and bring a chair for the esteemed prince to sit. Yarrow Moen immediately ordered when she saw Yi Junqing standing there in sorrow. When the servants heard this, they looked towards Yarrow Moen. Even though she had entered the palace, she was still that foolish third miss. Ah, how could they let His Highness sit in front of the residence? It wasn't like he was a stone lion. Cough cough. His recollection came to an abrupt halt. Yi Junqing stared at Yarrow Moen with a dark expression, then quickly followed after her. When Yarrow Moen walked into the residence with Yarrow Yu, they ran into a worried Yarrow Tu third miss. Ah! This old servant kowtows in salute to consort Yarrow. This old servant kowtows in salute to esteemed prince. As the steward of the Prime Minister residence, Yarrow Tu naturally recognized members of the imperial family and court officials. When he saw Yi Junqing, he couldn't help but be surprised. However, what surprised him even more was Yarrow Yu. Steward Yarrow, hurry and stand up. Moen isn't used to people kneeling. Yarrow Moen reached out to help Yarrow Tu up. In the entire Prime Minister Yarrow residence, only Yarrow Tu knew that the current Yarrow Moen was no longer the foolish child from back then. Consort Yarrow, why is the young master with you? Old master is worried to death and is currently reprimanding First Madam. Yarrow Tu looked at Yarrow Yu happily and exclaimed. It's a long story. I'll take Yarrow Yu to see his mother first. Yarrow Moen didn't hide anything in front of Yarrow Tu. This old servant will report to master first. Just as Yarrow Tu was about to turn, Yarrow Moen stopped him. No, Moen wants to personally give father this surprise. Just watch and don't let anyone say anything. Yarrow Moen smiled, but it was abnormally cold. This old servant obeys, but Third Madam is currently in the woodshed. Yarrow Tu naturally understood Yarrow Moen's intentions and cupped his hands slightly in response. Behind them, Yi Junqing frowned slightly and silently followed Yarrow Moen to the woodshed in the rear courtyard. Liu Xingting and Yu exchanged a glance and followed. Yarrow Moen pulled Yarrow Yutsai past the arched door of the woodshed and heard a miserable wail coming from the woodshed. Speak. Did you hide the young master? Where are you hiding? The shrill voice pierced everyone's eardrums. Yu Ji instructed the old mama on both sides to continuously beat Su Muzi. At that time, the imperial palace sent word that Yarrow Yu had not been found and that Do Xianglan should be prepared. Do Xianglan thought of such an extreme method, forcefully dragging the weak Su Muzi to the woodshed and beating her until she admitted that she had hidden the child. Give my Yue back. Ah, Su Muzi's miserable voice rang out. You're still being stubborn. Beat them up. Hit him hard. The fierce voice sounded again. Outside the door, Yarrow Yu heard his mother's wails and immediately clenched his fists. He was just about to rush in when Yarrow Moen stopped him. Chapter 43. Scram. You're not allowed to bully mother. Yarrow Yu fiercely pushed aside the two maids who were whipping him like a crazed leopard. Before the maids could react, the pearl hairpin in his hand had already pierced into their flesh. Ayo. While the two maids were in pain, Yarrow Yu immediately rushed to Su Muzi's side. His heart ached as he looked at his mother who was covered in blood. Tears fell down his face. Little young master. Su Muzi. You're still saying you didn't hide him. Little young master, quickly come with me to see master. At the side, Yuji was startled for a moment before she immediately went to pull Yarrow Yu. Yarrow Yu was filled with hatred. He suddenly raised the pearl hairpin in his hand and fiercely stabbed Yuji's arm. Ayo. You little bastard. You actually dared to stab me. Watch how I take care of you. Like master, like servant. Yuji looked down on Su Muzi and Yarrow Yu from the bottom of her heart. Normally, she could put on an act in front of Yarrow Yu out of respect for master, but now that she was injured, she naturally revealed her vicious side. Seeing that Yuji was about to carry Yarrow Yu horizontally and was about to hit him, Liu Xing and Ting Yu immediately rushed in and subdued Yuji. Yarrow Yu, who had been released, was like a roaring lion. He held a pearl hairpin in each hand and desperately stabbed it into Yuji's leg. Again and again, it was like raindrops, causing Yuji to howl in pain. When the two maids saw this, they wanted to go forward to stop them but were stopped by Liu Xing's shout. His master's flesh and blood. If you guys dare to hurt him, master will skin you. The two maids looked at each other in dismay, not knowing how to advance or retreat. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and help third madam back to Quiet Snow Pavilion. Could it be that you're waiting for little young master to greet you one by one? When Ting Yu saw the unconscious Su Muzi on the ground, she sternly yelled. When the two maids heard this, they immediately threw away the whips in their hands and carefully carried Su Muzi out of the woodshed. Ayo. Come back. You're all rebelling. Hurry and pull this little bastard away. Stop. Let go of me. Save me. Both of Yuji's legs were already riddled with holes by Yarrow Yu. She howled and screamed in pain. It was so painful that she almost fainted, but the piercing pain kept rushing to her head, making her extremely clear-headed. Yarrow Moen only indicated for Liu Xing and Ting Yu to let go when Yarrow Yu was tired. Yuji lost her restraints and fell flat onto the pile of straw. Enduring the pain, she raised her head and saw that Yarrow Moen was standing right in front of her. So it's you, you damned girl. You were the one who hid that little bastard. You even let these two lowly slaves pull me. I'm going to report this to master. Report to first madam. Ouch, it hurts so much. Yuji was confused by the pain, and she screamed at the top of her lungs. It wasn't me. It was the esteemed prince who told them to stop you. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yuji with an aggrieved expression. On both sides, Ting Yu and Liu Xing fiercely nodded. The corners of Yi Juanqing's lips twitched and large beads of cold sweat fell from the back of his head. He couldn't help but look towards Yarrow Moen, but Yarrow Moen only shrugged slightly, looking as if there was nothing she could do. Just because you called me a damned girl, it wouldn't be too much even if I cut you down. Yi Juanqing swept a cold glance over Yuji, but didn't deny it. Yarrow Yu, come here. Third older sister will accompany you to find father. Yarrow Moen pulled the panting Yarrow Yu and walked out of the woodshed without looking back. Ting Yu and Liu Xing naturally followed after her. Yuji was the only one left in the woodshed, screaming for help. Before Yarrow Moen even stepped into Bamboo Wish Pavilion, she heard a roar coming from inside. Chapter 44. Do you really think this old man doesn't dare to kill you? How many pairs of eyes saw you bring Yue into the Imperial Palace yesterday, but only you came back later? If you had said that Yue was in the Imperial Palace, This old man would have believed it, but now you're framing Su Muzi. Do Xianglan. That's this old man's only son. Yarrow Zhenting's eyes were scarlet red as his rough fingers grabbed Do Xianglan's neck. Hey! Old master, quickly let go. If this concubine dies, Sulwan won't let you off. Do Xianglan's eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Yarrow Zhenting, who was like a trapped beast released from its cage, her face turning purple. If this old man doesn't have a son, I still won't let her off. Do you think this old man doesn't know what you're thinking? Do Xianglan, you're overestimating that imperial Gui Fei of yours too much. If she was powerful, she'd be the empress by now. How could she be a mere imperial Gui Fei? This old man will give you one last chance. Hand over Yue and this old man will spare your life. Otherwise. Yarrow Zhenting narrowed his eyes and increased the strength in his grip. Hey! Let go. Hurry and let go. When Do Xianglan's voice grew softer and softer and her eyes rolled back, the door was suddenly pushed open from the outside and Yarrow Yu jumped in. Behind him, Yarrow Moen stood at the door with a cold expression, her eyes as cold as frost. She wouldn't let Do Xianglan die so easily. Some debts had to be settled one by one. Yue, it's great that you're all right. That's great. The instant Yarrow Zhenting saw Yarrow Yu, he threw off Do Xianglan and hugged Yarrow Yu tightly in his arms. His slightly stubbled mouth kept kissing Yarrow Yu's face. Yarrow Moen could clearly see tears flash through Yarrow Zhenting's eyes. Just how much he loved this son of his. Cough cough. Cough cough cough. Do Xianglan, who had been thrown to the ground by Yarrow Zhenting, took deep breaths. After a while, her expression returned to normal. Wana kowtows in salute to father. After watching this show, Yarrow Moen finally stepped into the room and walked gracefully to Yarrow Zhenting. Moen. Hey! This old subject kowtows in salute to consort Yarrow, kowtows in salute to esteemed prince. Yarrow Zhenting looked towards Yarrow Moen in surprise. Only when he saw Yi Junqing walk in did he realize that he had forgotten himself. He hastily let go of Yarrow Yu and bowed respectfully. How could Wan accept father's greeting? Quickly get up. When Yarrow Moen saw this, she hurriedly walked forward to help Yarrow Zhenting up. Why are you still standing there? Hurry and serve tea to consort Yarrow and the esteemed prince. Yarrow Zhenting glared at Do Xianglan, who had just caught her breath. Yarrow Mo Wan, why is Yarrow Yu with you? Are you the one who hid him? Say it. The moment she saw Yarrow Yu and Yarrow Moen, Do Xianglan was instantly enlightened. No wonder Cai Ying couldn't find Yarrow Yu, it was definitely this damned girl's doing. Chapter 45. Shut up. Don't you see that the esteemed prince is still here? Yarrow Zhenting looked towards Do Xianglan fiercely. He already had a plan in mind. Master, you can't just believe his side of the story. Do Xianglan hurriedly explained. I've let the esteemed prince see a joke. Consort Yarrow, prince, please come to the main hall. Yarrow Zhenting temporarily suppressed his anger and gestured respectfully for them to leave. Then he pulled Yarrow Yu out of Bamboo Wish Pavilion. On the way back to the palace, Yarrow Moen was silent. Whenever she thought of Su Muzi's bloodstained body, she couldn't help but think of her mother. At that time, she had been too foolish, actually believing that father and Do Xianglan would treat her mother well. In order to help Yi Hongyi consolidate his power, the number of times she visited her mother could be counted on one hand. It was only when she knelt in front of her mother's bed that she saw the true faces of these hypocrites. Unfortunately, it was too late. Her jade-like fingers clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Yarrow Mo Wan didn't even realize that her palms were bleeding. Her beautiful eyes gradually became watery. The Prime Minister's wife is so domineering. You must have suffered quite a bit because of her, right? Said Yi Jun lightly when he sensed Yarrow Moen's tense body. Fortunately, those days are over. I won't let anyone bully me or the people I cherish anymore. Yarrow Moen took a deep breath and leaned lazily against the agarwood planks in the carriage. Her eyes swept over Yi Junqing and her lips curved into a confident smile. That's why you want to play dumb to please the emperor? As long as you have the emperor's protection, you don't need to be afraid of anyone. That doesn't seem right. You've been acting dumb since you were young. Could it be that you knew that you would be made a consort when you were young? Yi Junqing was confused by his own question. If Prince guesses correctly, then I'll tell you the reason. A faint smile appeared on Yarrow Moen's lips. It was rare to see Yi Junqing being this unclear. If this prince had guessed correctly, would there be a need for you to tell me? Yi Junqing suddenly felt like he was being mocked and glared at Yarrow Moen. As expected of an ambitious and ruthless character who has fought on the battlefield for a long time. Your reaction is really fast. Yarrow Moen's smile deepened. However, Yi Junqing couldn't tell that Yarrow Moen was praising him. Right at this moment, the curtain of the carriage was suddenly lifted, and a plainly dressed man shockingly boarded the carriage. This subordinate greets Consort Yarrow. Greetings, Your Highness. Has Prince been well these past few days? The sonorous voice had a unique accent to it. Yi Junqing was startled by this and looked towards the newcomer in confusion. Thunder Rush. Didn't you return to the countryside to farm? The newcomer was none other than Ben Lei from the Su Palace that day. Ben Lei felt that farming really didn't have a future, so he joined Consort Yarrow and became a hidden guard. Only now did Yi Junqing notice that Ben Lei was actually cupping his hands towards Yarrow Moen. You defected to her? You know who she is? Yi Junqing was suddenly confused as to what was going on. The subordinate he was most proud of and most loyal to had actually thrown his lot in with this woman who only knew how to feign ignorance. Who she is not important. What's important is that she is Ben Lei's master. Ben Lei replied solemnly. It seems that Prince is feeling a bit regretful. Such a loyal guard has been taken advantage of by Moen. Yarrow Moen added fuel to the fire when she saw Yi Junqing's shocked expression. From the looks of it now, he wasn't loyal enough, said Yi Junqing hatefully. Ben Lei, how are things going? Yarrow Moen ignored Yi Junqing, who had turned his head away indignantly, and looked towards Ben Lei with a solemn expression. Consort Yarrow, don't worry. Ben Lei has already followed Consort Yarrow's instructions and taken over your business in Meng Yuan. Ben Lei's words were vague, but in reality, he had taken over the covert operation that Yarrow Morshin had secretly established in Meng Yuan, as well as a few large money-making businesses. You have business in Meng Yuan? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in confusion. Chapter 46. Well done. Here are the instructions for the next step. I'll leave Meng Yuan to you. Yarrow Moen casually took out a bamboo tube from her sleeve and handed it to Ben Lei. Don't worry, master. Ben Lei definitely won't let you down. Ben Lei took the bamboo tube and subconsciously looked towards Yi Junqing. When he saw Yarrow Moen nod slightly, he didn't delay any longer and left the carriage. Yarrow Moen's heart was indescribably heavy. She leaned heavily against the wood and looked towards the carriage shed. Meng Yuan was a place with many metal mines, so it had the reputation of being a land of fish and rice. It was located at the border of Chu and Shu and wasn't included in the two countries' territories. It had always been a point of conflict between Chu and Shu. At the time, Yarrow Moen had secretly sent people to live here behind Yi Hongyi's back. She had also allocated funds to build a money house, a cloth house, and a grain house. Furthermore, she had privately bought horses and soldiers. She had wanted to wait until the time was right to tell Yi Hongyi and give him a pleasant surprise. However, she hadn't expected that Yi Hongyi would beat her to it and give her a huge pleasant surprise. After returning to the imperial palace, Yi Junqing got off the carriage and left without saying a single word to Yarrow Moen. Yarrow Moen understood his current state of mind. The vanguard he was most proud of had thrown himself under her wing, so Yi Junqing definitely felt betrayed. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but smile as she watched Yi Junqing leave. If you don't want to fight, don't fight, that's fine. Moen will fight for you and fight for you. No matter what methods she uses, Moen will return you a magnificent great Chu. Niang Niang, the esteemed prince seems unhappy, asked Tingyu in a small voice. She seemed to have noticed something was off. Let him be. Yarrow Moen sighed lightly, then walked towards Guan Osprey Palace with Tingyu and Liu Xing. Just as the three of them reached the imperial garden, they suddenly heard a low moan coming from a canna tree about half a person tall on the left. Niang Niang. Liu Xing instinctively moved in front of Yarrow Moen and looked towards the bushes on the left. Yarrow Moen was speechless and gave Liu Xing a look. Liu Xing immediately jumped into the canna tree. Yarrow Moen was very moved. She suddenly thought that even if there was a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, Liu Xing probably wouldn't hesitate with just a glance from her. After about half the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Liu Xing walked out carrying a palace maid covered in scars. Niang Niang, she's not dead yet but her injuries aren't light. As she looked at the palace maid in Liu Xing's arms, her hair was in a mess, her neck was bruised, and her body was covered in wounds of various sizes. Yarrow Moan's gaze turned cold. This was definitely An Bingshan's work. Liu Xing, carefully send her to the shack at the back of Changle Palace. Then think of a way to get some medicine and food for her. Do your best to save her. Yarrow Moan lifted her eyes to look around. Fortunately, no one noticed. Yes. Liu Xing never asked for the reason. As long as Yarrow Moan gave the order, he would do it. After Liu Xing left, Yarrow Moan finally calmed down and brought Tingyu back to Guan Osprey Palace. Chapter 47. Your Majesty is reading. Wan doesn't dare disturb you. Yarrow Moan gathered her thoughts and walked over with her delicate face. Her hands very naturally landed on Yi Hongyi's palms. She glanced sideways and saw the title of the book, Ancient Style of Famous Generals. Yarrow Moan remembered this book. It recorded the glory and disgrace of all the famous generals. The cause of death was especially detailed. Was it still not enough to keep Yi Junqing in the imperial palace? Yi Hongyi just didn't feel safe like this. It was as if in his eyes, everyone had the possibility of betraying him. It was just a matter of whether they were big or small. Jin was waiting for you. I only read books when I'm bored. If you come back, Jin naturally won't have to read these boring books anymore. Jin's little vixen is much more interesting than these books. Yi Hongyi wrapped his arms around Yarrow Moan's waist and held her between his legs. He twirled her hair around her chest. They clearly hadn't parted for long, but he actually felt a bit reluctant. Wan also misses Your Majesty. Yarrow Moan hooked her arms around Yi Hongyi's neck, her small face sticking to his chest. Her plain eyes flashed with a deep light. On the bed, two entwined bodies pressed against each other. Yi Hongyi was completely indulged in this wonderful feeling, unable to extricate himself. Below him, Yarrow Moan's jade finger lightly lifted, the pad of her finger brushing across Yi Hongyi's sharp brows. Your Majesty is so beautiful. Yarrow Moan praised sincerely. At that time, Yi Hongyi had been the most dazzling man in the world in her eyes. He had hooked her soul and made her wholeheartedly unwavering until death. But now, what Yarrow Moan saw was clearly a ravenous wolf, a beast with a black heart. Yarrow Moan's innocent gaze and ambiguous actions finally made Yi Hongyi soar into the clouds. He felt a carefree feeling he had never felt before. Wan is really Jin's vixen. Yi Hongyi flipped over and lay down next to Yarrow Moan. He tenderly pulled her into his embrace and stroked her snowy shoulders. When Jin went to court today, there were many officials who spoke ill of your father in front of Jin. What do you think we should do? Why did they speak ill of father? Did father do something wrong? If father did something wrong, he should be punished. Every time Wan does something wrong, she will be punished. Yarrow Moan innocently looked towards Yi Hongyi. That kind of serious expression made Yi Hongyi unable to help but laugh. Wan also has a time when she makes mistakes. Every time I do something wrong, Di mother will lock Wan in the woodshed for several days. She won't give her food or water, and she'll even have Yuji whip Wan. It really hurts. Yarrow Moan deliberately moved her body closer to Yi Hongyi, as if she was seeking shelter. What did you do wrong for them to punish you like this? Does the Prime Minister not care? When he felt the body in his arms tremble slightly, the depths of Yi Hongyi's eyes turned cold. Wan doesn't know either. Perhaps Wan isn't as smart as eldest sister, and I'm not as likable as second sister. In any case, Wan's words are always wrong, always making Di mother angry. Your Majesty. If only Wan wasn't so stupid. Yarrow Mo Wan's voice carried a heavy sobbing tone as her body trembled even more violently. Chapter 48. Another round of desperate entanglement ensued. As she watched Yi Hongyi greedily take from her body, a faint ripple appeared in Yarrow Mo Wan's heart. How much Yi Hongyi cared about her depended on how much of her words he actually listened to. The next day, Yarrow Moan sat on the chaise long with Fluffy in her arms and stroked her snow-white fur pensively. When she saw Liu Xing walk in, she handed Fluffy to Ting Yu. "How is it?" Replying Niang Niang, "That palace maid probably can't be saved. She's talking nonsense right now. From what this servant can see, she probably won't make it past the night," reported Liu Xing in a low voice. "It's good that she's dead. Living in such humiliation is probably worse than death." Yarrow Moan's eyes darkened slightly as she sighed. "Niang Niang, who was it that was so vicious to injure the palace maid like that?" Liu Xing couldn't hide the anger on his face when he recalled the bloodstains all over the palace maid's body. "And Bingshan." Yarrow Moan bit out these 3 words. "It's him. Relying on His Majesty's favor, he's truly lawless," said Liu Xing hatefully as he clenched his fists. Ben Gong also relied on His Majesty's favor to push Consort Chen into the water unscrupulously. Yarrow Moan glanced towards Liu Xing as she spoke each word firmly. "Niang Niang." Liu Xing seemed to sense Yarrow Moan's anger and immediately restrained his emotions to respectfully wait. "Ben Gong wants to tell you that this is the truth. Whoever obtains His Majesty's favor can be lawless. Liu Xing, Ben Gong knows that you're loyal, but in the Imperial Palace, this is a great taboo. And Bingshan is His Majesty's favorite. Not to mention palace maids and eunuchs, even concubines and officials have to bow and bow respectfully when they see him. No matter how dissatisfied you are, you have to endure in front of him. Understood?" Yarrow Moan's expression was grave as she spoke cautiously. "Liu Xing understands. Ian, accompany Ben Gong for a stroll." Yarrow Moan put away her solemn expression and lazily got up to walk out of Guan Osprey Palace. "Niang Niang, where are we going?" asked Ting Yu carefully. "Even if I die, I have to die with value," Yarrow Moan muttered as she walked out of Guan Osprey Palace. Ting Yu and Liu Xing looked at each other. Although they didn't understand their master's words, they didn't dare to ask any more questions and followed him out. The Imperial Kitchen occupied the entire northwest corner of the Imperial Palace. As far as the eye could see, there were at least a dozen of them, and it was a majestic sight to behold. The ingredient hall before them was the largest of them all. Every day, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the palace maids would come here to order food. Then, the corresponding little eunuchs would send the ingredients on the menu to the different small kitchens. In the entire Imperial Palace, besides the Emperor, Imperial Guifei, and Pin, who had their own small kitchens, the nobles, talents, and beauties below the rank of Pin would have their meals arranged by the main kitchens. They didn't have the right to order food. At this time, Yarrow Moan was currently walking on the path from Pure Flowers Palace to the Imperial Kitchen. "Niang Niang, Cai Ying is here." When Liu Xing saw Cai Ying's figure, he hurriedly ran back to report. "Ting Yu, where do you think Big Sister hid that thing? Could it be that such an important thing was hidden in her residence? How about we go look for it?" Yarrow Moan saw Cai Ying's figure out of the corner of her eyes and immediately raised her voice. Chapter 49. Liu Xing, did you see it clearly? Cai Ying really returned to Pure Flowers Palace? Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes flickered as she raised her brows. Replying Niang Niang, this servant saw it clearly. Liu Xing nodded fiercely. "Liu Xing, lead An Bingshan to the shack. Do you know what to say?" Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips lifted slightly as a light shot out of her eyes. "Niang Niang, don't worry, this servant understands." Liu Xing accepted the order confidently and turned to leave. Seeing that Liu Xing had walked far away, Ting Yu hugged Fluffy and moved to Yarrow Mo Wan's side. "Niang Niang is wise as expected," said Ting Yu in admiration. "How wise?" Yarrow Mo Wn took Fluffy from Ting Yu's hands and looked towards Ting Yu with interest. If An Bingshan saw Imperial Guifei in the shack, he would definitely think that Imperial Gui Fei had saved that palace maid. According to common sense, Imperial Gui Fei saved the person and Bingshan wanted to kill, not to threaten him, but to slander him in front of His Majesty. No matter what An Bingshan thinks, he and Imperial Gui Fei will definitely have a grudge. This servant finally understands what Niang Niang said just now. Even if you die, you have to die with value. Since that palace maid couldn't be saved, Niang Niang should let her die a worthy death. Ting Yu analyzed carefully. Girl, you're getting smarter and smarter. Then do you know why Ben Gong wants to deal with Imperial Gui Fei? Asked Yarrow Mo Wan. It was her and Big Madam who killed Second Madam. Niang Niang wants to take revenge for Second Madam, replied Ting Yu firmly. Yarrow Mo Wan didn't say anything but nodded with a smile in her eyes. Other than mother, she also wanted to take revenge for herself, Zhonga, and her younger sister. She would let Yarrow Sulwan experience all the pain in the world before sending her to hell. Niang Niang, then what should we do now? Ting Yu looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan excitedly. Now! Go to the Imperial kitchen and order lunch. Esteemed Prince hasn't eaten anything since morning. Yarrow Mo Wan smiled knowingly when she thought of that immortal-like handsome face. Ting Yu received the order and happily headed towards the Imperial kitchen. Pure Flowers Palace. Yarrow Sulwan's jade fingers gripped the embroidered handkerchief. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, emitting a sinister chill. That idiot really said that. Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Cai Ying suspiciously. This servant heard very clearly. She said that Empress Niang left her something very valuable. When this servant returned, Yarrow Mo Wan had already left for Changle Palace. Cai Ying reported what she heard to Yarrow Sulwan. What could it be? Could it be? Cai Ying, accompany Ben Gong to Eternal Music Palace. Yarrow Sulwan's beautiful eyes widened and she immediately got up to leave Pure Flowers Palace. She secretly guessed that the treasure Yarrow Mo Wan was talking about was very likely related to her. Yarrow Mo Shin had quite a bit of information that could be used against her when she was alive. If that evidence fell into His Majesty's hands, whether or not she could keep the title of Imperial Gui Fei was a small matter. Whether or not she could keep her life was also unknown. Niang Niang, Changle Palace is a forbidden area. Without His Majesty's decree, we... Cai Ying cautiously reminded. What's there to be afraid of? At that time, we'll just say that we went to look for that fool. Even if someone is guilty, that fool is the one who is guilty. Hurry up and go. Yarrow Sulwan urged and rushed toward Changle Palace. When she returned to Guan Osprey Palace, the moment Yarrow Mo Wan stepped through the palace doors, she saw Yi Junqing sitting there dressed in white. Moan thought that Prince had ascended to become an immortal. Yarrow Mo Wan was slightly startled, then she walked in with Fluffy in her arms. Ben Wang wants to eat cat meat. Yi Junqing harumphed coldly as he glanced coldly at Fluffy in Yarrow Mo Wan's arms. Fluffy seemed to have intelligence and jumped out of Yarrow Mo Wan's arms to hide far away. Prince, there's no need to be anxious. Ting Yu has already gone to deliver lunch. Also, why does Prince have to make life difficult for a cat? It's truly ungraceful. Yarrow Mo Wan ignored him and sat down in front of Yi Junqing. Ben Wang hates the house and its crow. Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan disdainfully. He was still brooding over Ben Lei's betrayal. So it was Mo Wan who implicated Fluffy. Yarrow Mo Wan didn't care about Yi Junqing's unfriendliness and wasn't angry at his inaction. Chapter 50. Don't be complacent. Ben Wang will be able to see through your true colors very soon. Yi Junqing's eyes were filled with confidence. Alright, Moan is also looking forward to it. I just don't know how you'll react then. Yarrow Moan smiled lightly as she cursed inwardly. It was very rare for Yarrow Moan to see Yi Junqing eat so quickly. If he wasn't mindful of his appearance, his chopsticks would sweep through the food on the table in an instant. Then he would put down his chopsticks and leave with large strides. Yarrow Moan didn't even have time to eat before finishing the lunch. Niang Niang, this servant sees that Wang Yi is really hungry. Should this servant prepare some more for you? Ting Yu looked at the mess on the table and walked over to Yarrow Moan's side. Being able to eat is a good thing. There's no need. Ben Gong doesn't feel hungry anymore after seeing him eat. In the future, keep an eye on Fluffy. Who knows, she might be stewed by him one day. Yarrow Moen got up in a good mood and walked into the inner room to rest. Outside Changle Palace, Yarrow Sulwan walked around a few times but couldn't find Yarrow Moen. Niang Niang, this servant searched the two side rooms but didn't see them. Cai Ying came out of the side room and quickly returned to Yarrow Sulwan's side to report. You're sure they came to the main hall? Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Cai Ying suspiciously. This servant only heard them say they were coming to Changle Palace to look for treasures. Perhaps they've returned, guessed Cai Ying. Returned? To Guan Osprey Palace. Yarrow Sulwan frowned. Just as she stepped out of Changle Palace, she coincidentally bumped into Consort Chen, who was walking over. TSK. Ever since Consort Li became the Imperial Noble Consort, isn't she becoming a bit too arrogant and disregarding His Majesty's words more and more? If Ben Gong remembers correctly, Changle Palace is a forbidden area. Without His Majesty's decree, no one is allowed to enter. Huan Kia walked over to Yarrow Sulwan with a slight tilt of her delicate chin in a provocative manner. Since Consort Chen knows that my master is the Imperial Noble Consort, then you should salute and kowtow to my master. Cai Ying stepped forward to remind her. Ben Gong kowtow to her? Even the Empress back then, Ben Gong never bowed to her in private. Your Yarrow family is really good. First, you have an Empress, and then you have an Imperial Noble Consort. Now, even a fool has become an Imperial Noble Consort. However, there is a saying that when you stand high, you fall hard. You better keep a close eye on that idiotic younger sister of yours. In any case, she's still a Guifei. Don't crawl into a dog hole. Huan Kia snorted coldly. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, Yarrow Sulwan stopped her. You saw Consort Yarrow? Yarrow Sulwan's eyes turned slightly cold as she asked solemnly. Zishuang, do you think Ben Gong should tell the Imperial Noble Consort that the fool is in the shack behind Changle Palace? Heh. Huan Kia smiled and glanced at Yarrow Sulwan, then walked away with Zishuang's support. Looking at Huan Kia's arrogant and despotic back, Yarrow Sulwan's expression froze. Your ladyship, this Consort Chen has always looked down on you, and now she's even more arrogant. We should have drowned her back then. Cai Ying cursed fiercely. Don't worry about her. To the shack. Yarrow Sulwan didn't seem to hear Cai Ying's complaints and walked quickly towards the shack. Hiding important things in unexpected places seemed to be Yarrow Morshin's style. Huan Kia, who had only walked a few steps, saw Yarrow Sulwan walk towards the shack and the corners of her lips hooked up in an extremely deep smile. Your ladyship, the person we just saw was clearly Unicorn. Why did you tell the Imperial Noble Consort it was that idiot? Asked Zishuang, who was next to Huan Kia in confusion. Chapter 51. Ben Gong would be afraid of her. Huan Kia glared at the direction Yarrow Sulwan disappeared in before leaving. In front of the shack, Yarrow Sulwan vaguely heard movement inside and thought that Yarrow Mo Wn was definitely looking for something. She immediately pushed open the door and rushed in. The scene in front of her made her pale with fright. She saw that An Bingshan's hands were gripping the palace maid's neck. That palace maid's hair was a mess, her eyes were bulging, and her body was covered in bloody marks. Blood flowed from the corner of her lips. She was in a terrible state and was probably already dead. Unicorn. Yarrow Sulwan never dreamed that she would see such a frightening scene. She had heard that An Bingshan had a hobby of playing with palace maids, but she never thought that it would be so outrageous. What gave her a headache was that she actually saw this scene with her own eyes. Cough cough. This old servant kowtows in salute to Imperial Gui Fei. Why would Imperial Gui Fei lower herself to enter this kind of place? An Bingshan was also stunned for a moment, but in the next second, he released the palace maid's neck as if nothing had happened and respectfully walked in front of Yarrow Sulwan to salute humbly. Ben Gong. Ben Gong came to look for Yarrow Fei. Did Unicorn see Yarrow Fei when you came? Yarrow Sulwan felt her head buzzing. As an Imperial Gui Fei, there was no need to fear a eunuch. However, This Bingshan was extremely trusted by His Majesty and was His Majesty's favorite. At that time, an imperial concubine had been dragged out by His Majesty to be beaten to death because she had insulted Bingshan. Yarrow Sulwan wasn't afraid of losing her life. In the end, she was the Prime Minister's daughter, so she didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with Bingshan. It had to be known that it was better to offend a gentleman than to offend a villain, especially a villain among villains like Bingshan. Imperial Gui Fei is teasing this servant. How long has Yarrow Fei entered the palace? How could she find this kind of place? When this old servant came, I only saw a palace maid that was on the verge of death. This old servant was thinking of moving her to the Imperial Hospital to see if there were any doctors. Just as I reached out, Niang, you came. Bingshan said this seriously as a trace of coldness flashed through his heart. It seemed that the note was real. Yarrow Sulwan had really saved this palace maid and was preparing to confront him in front of His Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan, you want to fight with Zijia before you even have a firm footing? Zijia will remember this debt for you. Sooner or later, you will pay. Since Consort Yarrow isn't here, this consort will be leaving. Yarrow Sulwan really didn't want to stay in this room for even a moment longer, especially in front of a dead person and Bingshan, who was even more disgusting than a dead person. Your Highness, you can't leave. You're the imperial noble consort right now, so you're the most powerful person in the inner palace. Now that this palace maid's death is unclear, I'll have to trouble Your Highness to investigate. Since Your Highness has taken over, this old servant will take his leave. After Bingshan cleared himself, he walked out of the room without looking back. Now that there was no evidence, he reckoned that Yarrow Sulwan wouldn't go looking for trouble. Seeing Bingshan leave, Cai Ying immediately walked to the side of the palace maid and after extending her hand, she shook her head towards Yarrow Sulwan. Damned Huan Kia, how dare you be so treacherous? Looking at the dead palace maid, Yarrow Sulwan gnashed her teeth and roared. On the side, Cai Ying hurriedly walked over. Niang, how should we deal with this palace maid? Cai Ying nervously looked towards her mistress. Chapter 52. This consort was just thinking about how this consort would explain if Yarrow Sulwan came to ask. It seems that Huan Kia has helped this consort greatly. Give Fluffy to me. You guys must be tired, so there's no need for you to serve here. Go and rest. Yarrow Moan's lips curved slightly as she took Fluffy from Ting Yu's hands. Fluffy seemed to have intelligence. As soon as she entered Yarrow Moan's embrace, she rubbed against her affectionately. Right after Liu Xing and Ting Yu left, Yi Junqing walked in elegantly. Wanna didn't know that Prince had the hobby of eavesdropping. In truth, if Prince wants to know anything, you can ask Moan directly. Moan will definitely tell you everything she knows without holding anything back. Yarrow Moan stroked the cat gently without looking at Yi Junqing. The door was wide open, it would be hard for this prince not to listen. Yi Junqing lifted his brows as he looked towards Yarrow Moan. He just wanted to know what Yarrow Moan didn't want to say. That was Moan's negligence. Yarrow Moan smiled silently and indicated for Yi Junqing to sit down and eat. Isn't it because of your negligence? That. This prince hasn't been standing outside for long, so how did you know? You know martial arts. Yi Junqing half admitted it out of curiosity. Moan's nose is very sensitive, I smelled it out. Yarrow Moan wasn't lying. She had known Yi Junqing for many years, so she naturally knew that the jade pendant on his waist was called the body jade. The jade was transparent and sparkled like amber. It also had a fragrance similar to sandalwood, but lighter. Over time, Yi Junqing's body would also be stained with this scent. Although it wasn't strong, it was enough for Yarrow Moan to notice. Only a ghost would believe that. Yarrow Moan smiled when she saw that Yi Junqing had no intention of eating at all. Since Prince has a friend here, why don't you invite him down to eat with you? That way, we won't neglect this friend. The moment Yarrow Moan said this, Yi Junqing jumped up as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes widened. And you said you don't know martial arts. How did you know there was someone in the room? Yi Junqing gritted his teeth. He had been with this woman for so long, yet he hadn't noticed at all. Before Yarrow Moen could open her mouth, she felt a gust of wind and the palace doors closed with a bang. There was a person standing in front of her. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. That was a flawless face. Every time Yarrow Moen recalled it, she was still amazed. He had a flawless, handsome face like white jade. His facial features were like fragmented jade, and his skin was smooth and creamy, even more beautiful than a woman's. His long and narrow eyes were filled with a demonic charm, and as he looked around, he had the power to turn all living things upside down. Under his tall nose bridge, his thin lips arched into an arc as if he was holding a pearl in his mouth. The magnificent red robe he wore was as red as fire, and it served as a foil to the man's flirtatious charm. His jet-black long hair was like a waterfall, and the combination of red and black presented a bewitching effect. Even if all the women in the world fell into the abyss, they would still gladly endure it. Even Moen feels ashamed of her own inferiority in front of Gong's beauty. Yarrow Moen left her seat. Because she was carrying Fluffy, she only bowed slightly. I can't get enough of compliments. Why don't you say more? The man walked elegantly to the side of the table. His red robe fluttered even though there was no wind, making him seem even more ethereal like an immortal. However, the demonic charm he exuded when he frowned and smiled was more suitable to be described as devilish. Yang Nansheng, you idiot. She's calling you more of a woman than a woman. Can't you tell? Yi Junqing didn't hesitate to roll his eyes at the man. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but laugh. This was the first time she'd seen Yi Junqing so unconcerned about his image. Or perhaps, Yi Junqing had been enduring silently in front of Yarrow Moen. Her heart suddenly ached, and it was like ink had been soaked in a pond, gradually melting away. Are you swearing at me? Nansheng feels like it's very useful. Yang Nansheng shrugged as he looked towards Yarrow Moen. Moen is a genuine compliment. Yarrow Moen nodded sincerely. A pair of idiots. Yi Junqing was extremely speechless. His mind cleared up and he returned to the previous question. You still haven't said anything. How did you know he was on the roof? Don't say you guessed it or heard it. This prince doesn't believe it. Chapter 53. Such a smart girl. It's a pity to keep her in the imperial palace. If Miss is willing, you can follow me back to Phoenix Feather Manor. Nansheng will give you the position of Manor Lord's wife. Yang Nansheng smiled enchantingly like the first bloom of the moon. His beautiful peach blossom eyes shone with a brilliant light that could move one's soul. I've already heard this hundreds of times. Aren't you afraid that your Phoenix Feather Manor will be overcrowded? Yi Junqing suddenly had the urge to cover his face and run away. How did he know this love-struck fool? Moen is truly lacking in manners. So you're the Martial Alliance head. However, Moen feels that this Guan Osprey Palace isn't bad. If one day I get tired of it, there's no harm in following young master around. Young master, please sit. When Yarrow Moen first heard the name Yang Nansheng, she found it somewhat familiar. Only when she heard Phoenix Feather Manor did she realize that the person in front of her was the senior brother that Yi Junqing had mentioned, the current Martial Alliance head. As for Wind Feather Manor, it was like an imperial palace in the forest, its prestige inviolable. Then it's settled. Nansheng will remember this. Yang Nansheng couldn't help but smile enchantingly. With a flick of his sleeves, he sat down between Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing. Would young master mind sharing a table with Fluffy? Asked Yarrow Moen respectfully with a smile in her eyes. I mind, said Yi Junqing hatefully. He seriously doubted whether Yang Nansheng had any integrity at all. Then please overcome it, Prince. Young Master Yang, please. Yarrow Moen's gentle eyes looked towards Yang Nansheng, completely ignoring Yi Junqing's already flushed face. Miss doesn't need to be so polite with me. Just call me Nansheng. Otherwise, calling me Sheng isn't bad either. Yang Nansheng narrowed his eyes slightly and his beautiful lips hooked up into a charming smile. Nansheng also doesn't need to be so distant with Miss, call me Moen or Wanna. Yarrow Moen withdrew the sharpness in her eyes and replaced it with a trace of warmth. That's enough. Do you think I'm dead? Yang Nansheng, this prince didn't send you here to flirt with other women. I came here for you to tell her who she is. Also, what's going on with Meng Yuan? Yi Junqing couldn't help but fly into a rage. He had Yang Nansheng secretly investigate Yarrow Moen. Tonight, he had wanted to take Yarrow Moen down a notch and suppress her arrogance. However, Yang Nansheng's performance really made him lose a lot of face. Prince has been with Moen for so long, could it be that you don't know who Moen is? As for the business in Mengyuan, eldest sister had taken pity on Moen's naivety a few years ago, so she had privately left it for Moen to rely on. Prince can actually just ask Wanna. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Junqing, her clear eyes sparkling with a faint light. Yes, she's right. Yang Nansheng placed his hand on his perfectly curved jaw and nodded solemnly. When Yang Nansheng saw how furious Yi Junqing was, a trace of comfort flashed through his heart. When he had found out about Yarrow Morshin's death, Yi Junqing had been completely dumbfounded. No matter what he said, no matter what he didn't respond. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart, so that was how it should be. It was rare for someone to be able to pique his interest. This junior brother of his, had finally become lively. My ass. This king wants you to speak. Yi Junqing looked towards Yang Nansheng furiously. He didn't believe a single word Yarrow Moen said. It's the same if I say it. However, Nansheng really wants to know, Wanna, have you always been this shrewd, or did you only become this wise after leaving Joyous Spring Brothel? As the head of the Martial Arts Alliance, Yang Nansheng naturally had a way to investigate Yarrow Moen thoroughly. This matter concerned his junior brother's safety, so he naturally put in a lot of effort. Chapter 54. Nansheng and Moen are truly like-minded people. Yarrow Moen smiled. At the side, Yi Junqing caught the table in time to make sure that he didn't fall over in his anger. What like-minded people? You're just birds of the same feather. Me. Yi Junqing abruptly got up and stormed off. Only when he was sure that Yi Junqing had left did Yang Nansheng restrain the ridicule in his eyes and look towards Yarrow Moen solemnly. If you can make Ben Lei submit, then Miss definitely won't harm Junqing. However, Nansheng still wants to ask, what is Miss's true intentions? Yang Nansheng's tone was calm but it was extremely dignified. It was hard to lie under his gaze. Alliance head only needs to know that Moen won't harm the esteemed prince. As for my intentions, Moen will tell you the truth one day. However, now is not the time, so I hope Alliance head can forgive me, replied Yarrow Moen calmly. Once Yang Nansheng left, Yarrow Moen slowly let go of Fluffy and walked out of Guan Osprey Palace. When she didn't find Yi Junqing in the East Wing, she knew where he had gone. As she walked under the moonlight, her heart gradually calmed down. In the willow forest outside Changle Palace, she saw that familiar figure standing there with his hands clasped behind his back. Yi Junqing's side profile seemed to be covered in a layer of silver in the moonlight, making him look even more elegant and handsome. The night wind blew his long, ink-like hair, making him seem like an immortal general who had arrived on the moon and wind, untainted by a speck of dust. His figure was as steady as ever. Yi Junqing like this could attract the adoration and respect of countless noble young ladies with just a casual stand, but there was only one person in his eyes. Her heart ached for no reason. If she had chosen Yi Junqing back then instead of Yi Hongyi, what would the result have been? However, in this world, the cheapest things were what IFS, and the most useless things were also what IFS. This willow forest is a part of Changle Palace, it can also be considered a restricted area. Yarrow Moen walked towards Yi Junqing gracefully, the threat in her voice far less than concern. This prince had thought that you'd be drinking 300 cups with that love-struck fool in Guan Osprey Palace. Yi Junqing snorted coldly, but his gaze never left Changle Palace. How could Mo Wan's appearance enter the eyes of that great figure? Those are just jokes, why does Prince care? Yarrow Moen slowly walked over to Yi Junqing's side and followed his gaze towards Changle Palace. This was the place where she had spent the first half of her life, but now all that was left was disgust. This prince doesn't care about you. Yi Junqing suddenly felt that his words weren't right and immediately tried to explain himself. In his heart, there was only Morshin. There was no room for any other woman. Even if she was as intelligent as Morshin, even if she was as beautiful as Morshin, even if she was Morshin's younger sister, she was still not Morshin. Prince, don't worry. Moan knows her own limits. Yarrow Moan's expression was mournful as she replied sorrowfully. Her eyes gradually became watery as she gazed at Changal Palace. If there was anything worth remembering in that place, it would be the 10 months she spent with Zhonga. Every time she placed her hand on her abdomen, she felt as if a vigorous little life was growing strong and healthy. In the next second, the scene in the cold palace suddenly appeared in front of Yarrow Moan's eyes. She felt a sharp pain in her chest and her vision was suddenly shrouded in blood. Right after that, Yarrow Moan's vision went pitch black and she heard an urgent call by her ear. Chapter 55. After becoming Imperial Gui Fei, the number of times Yi Hongyi went to Pure Flower's palace had decreased. This gave Yarrow Sulwan a headache. Now that the position was empty, other than her, the 4 great Gui Fei were also eager to try. If she was the slightest bit careless, someone else would beat her to it. At this moment, Yarrow Sulwan was rubbing her forehead in thought. Niang Niang, eldest madam has come to see you. Cai Ying walked lightly to Yarrow Sulwan's side and murmured quietly, "Hurry and announce it." Yarrow Sulwan sighed and temporarily threw away her worries. When Do Xianglan came in, Yarrow Sulwan was stunned. "Mother, what happened to you? Did father do it?" Seeing the finger marks on both sides of Do Xianglan's face, Yarrow Sulwan's gaze turned cold and she questioned angrily. "Daughter, mother has suffered." The moment Do Xianglan saw Yarrow Sulwan, she suddenly threw herself at her with tears pouring out. She wailed like a pig being slaughtered. "Yuji, tell me, what's going on? What happened to your leg?" Yarrow Sulwan saw her mother crying her heart out and immediately looked at Yuji who had accompanied her. She found that Yuji was limping when she walked. Replying Imperial Gui Fei, Yuji's leg was crippled by that little bastard Yarrow Yu with a pearl hairpin. Also, this morning, eldest madam received an imperial edict as soon as she woke up. Not only did it strip eldest madam of her title of second-rank madam, it also ordered eldest madam to slap herself 30 times and have An Bingshan supervise the punishment. That An Bingshan also didn't know why, even though eldest madam had clearly used a lot of strength. He said he didn't hear anything and forced eldest madam to slap herself 20 more times. 50 slaps, how could eldest madam endure it? Yuji wiped her tears and mournfully explained. "Imperial edict. How could it be like this?" Yarrow Sulwan supported Do Xianglan to sit on the Gui Fei chair in disbelief and turned to order Cai Ying to get some ointment for her face. "Daughter, how did you provoke His Majesty? Why would His Majesty give that imperial edict? Mother, getting beaten is a small matter, but if you can't keep your title of Imperial Gui Fei, then our future days will be difficult." Do Xianglan recalled Yarrow Zhenting's disdainful gaze when she received the imperial edict and her heart turned cold. If he didn't have Yarrow Sulwan, this protective talisman, at best, he would be kicked out of court, at worst, he would lose his life. How could your daughter have the chance to provoke the emperor? Ever since that idiot was conferred the title, His Majesty practically stayed at Guan Osprey Palace every night. Even if he didn't go for 2 or 3 days, he would still go to Consort Chen and the other noble consorts' places. "I won't hide it from mother, His Majesty hasn't stepped into daughter's Pure Flowers Palace for half a month." Yarrow Sulwan furrowed her brows. Compared to when she was Consort Li, it was as if she had been banished to the cold palace. For a moment, Yarrow Sulwan even felt that the reason His Majesty pampered her so much before was because he wanted to use her to get rid of Yarrow Morshin. Now that Yarrow Morshin was dead, she no longer had any value. "It's that Yarrow Mo Wn again. She must have said bad things about me to the emperor, so the emperor sent an imperial edict to help her vent her anger. But I just don't understand. She's an idiot. Why does the emperor like her? Also, ever since that Yarrow Yu came back from the imperial palace, he's become more and more outrageous. All day long, he holds an embroidery needle and stands guard by Su Mu's side. Whoever dares to bully that lowly woman, he'll use the embroidery needle to stab them. Yesterday, a servant girl was chased all over the courtyard by him and was stabbed so miserably. This was definitely also taught by Yarrow Mo Wan. Normally, I see that she's silly, but I didn't expect that she actually has such a bad heart." Do Xianglan slapped her thigh and said hatefully. Father doesn't care. Yarrow Sulwan endured her anger and took the ointment from Cai Ying's hands, carefully applying it to Do Xianglan's face. Chapter 56. It's all this old one's fault for trusting Gao Momo. Otherwise, that idiot would have gone to hell long ago. Daughter, what should we do now? Do Xianglan looked towards Yarrow Sulwan nervously. Mother, don't be impatient. Isn't it just an idiot? It's not a problem for Ben Gong. Go back first. Try not to provoke Su Muzi and Yarrow Yu for the next 2 days. Yarrow Sulwan's eyes turned cold. That's fine, then you have to be careful. Do Xianglan pulled her daughter with heartache. Ian, don't worry. Daughter will soon let father know who it is that is carrying the glory of Yarrow family's ancestors. Yarrow Sulwan narrowed her eyes as her heart filled with hatred. The inner room of Guan Osprey Palace was completely silent. On the soft couch, the brocade bedding in Yarrow Mowan's hands was already crumpled out of shape. Her limpid eyes stared straight at the top of the bed. In order to hide the cause of his death, Yi Hongyi didn't hesitate to kill everyone who knew and even set fire to the cold palace, not leaving a single trace. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of others, he definitely would have destroyed Changle Palace as well. But what to do? I'm alive again. Yi Hongyi, this is probably something you couldn't even dream of, right? Niang Niang, you woke up. You scared this servant to death. As Yarrow Mo Wan was deep in thought, the room door creaked open. When Ting Yu saw that Yarrow Mo Wan had moved, she immediately walked over with the basin. Did I sleep for a long time? Yarrow Mo Wan sighed inwardly and got up. It's already been noon since the esteemed prince carried you back last night. Ting Yu supported Yarrow Mo Wan to the dressing table, then turned to hand Yarrow Mo Wan a towel dipped in warm water. Last night, it was the esteemed prince who carried Ben Gong back? Yarrow Mo Wan's lips curved into a faint smile as she recalled that figure that seemed to be riding the wind under the moonlight. Ian, but the esteemed prince's complexion was extremely bad last night. Ting Yu didn't dare to describe how the esteemed prince had forcefully thrown her master onto the couch. It was as if her master was a god of plague that wanted to get rid of him. Yarrow Mo Wan smiled lightly. Even if Ting Yu didn't say it, she could imagine what kind of icy expression Yi Junqing had last night. Just then, Liu Xing ran in from outside. Reporting to Your Highness, news has arrived from the Prime Minister residence. It says that First Madam received an imperial edict this morning. Not only was she stripped of her title as a second-rank madam, she was also ordered to slap herself 30 times. Moreover, because An Bingshan deliberately made things difficult for her, she was slapped 20 times more. After Da Furen was punished, she entered the imperial palace. When this servant came, Da Furen had already left Pure Flower's palace. Soon after, the imperial Gui Fei left the palace for the imperial study. Liu Xing reported all the information he had obtained. Is that so? It's rare for Your Majesty to care so much about the words of a fool. Yarrow Mo Wan's lips curved into a smile, the disdain in her eyes clear. How satisfying. Niang Niang, then what should we do now? Ting Yu looked towards Yarrow Moan excitedly. She knew that this matter definitely had something to do with her master. Of course it's to prepare lunch. Although this consort isn't hungry, this consort mustn't neglect the esteemed prince. Yarrow Moan got up gracefully and walked out of the bedroom. At the side, Ting Yu and Liu Xing looked at each other in confusion. They knew that their masters must have their own plans, so they didn't say anything more. Inside the imperial study, Yi Hongyi sat upright on the dragon throne, his brush occasionally sweeping across the memorials on the table. In front of the table, Yarrow Sulwan had already waited for the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. If the imperial Gui Fei has come to plead for leniency on behalf of the Prime Minister Residence's madam, then leave. We don't want to hear it, said Yi Hongyi coldly when he saw that Yarrow Sulwan wasn't speaking. Chapter 57. Other than thanking Your Majesty, Sulwan also has another matter to report to Your Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan's expression turned serious. Sit down and talk. Yi Hongyi lowered his gaze again, not noticing the change in Yarrow Sulwan's expression as he continued to read the memorials. 2 days ago, this concubine found out from Yarrow Fei that the Empress had left something very important for Yarrow Fei. Yarrow Sulwan said quietly as she stared at Yi Hongyi's expression. As expected, when he heard the word Empress, Yi Hongyi's hand suddenly stopped moving, but he still didn't look at Yarrow Sulwan. Seeing that Yi Hongyi didn't say anything, Yarrow Sulwan continued. This concubine guessed that the Empress already knew of your Majesty's intentions and left behind some sort of heaven-defying evidence. Now that the esteemed Prince and Yarrow Fei are both living in Guan Osprey Palace, if that important thing falls into the esteemed Prince's hands, Imperial Gui Fei also thinks that Zhen's intelligence is inferior to the Empress. The sinister voice sounded like a death knell from hell. Yarrow Sulwan was shocked when she heard it. She had unknowingly touched His Majesty's reverse scale. Your Majesty, please forgive me, this concubine didn't mean that. This concubine was afraid that the paper wouldn't cover the fire. If Yarrow Fei obtained that important thing, the consequences would be unthinkable. Your Majesty is wise, this concubine definitely didn't have any other intentions. Yarrow Sulwan knelt on the ground with a thud, her body trembling. Everyone in the Imperial Palace who knew about that matter has already gone to hell, except Zhen, and you, beloved concubine. Yi Hongyi emphasized each word, his dark brown pupils suddenly contracting. Your Majesty, please forgive me, this concubine was just worried that if, then don't let that happen. With a crack, the red brush broke in the middle, leaving a long smear of red on the memorial. Yi Hongyi abruptly swung his hand and the broken brush fell in front of Yarrow Sulwan. This concubine knows. This concubine promises to bury this matter in my heart forever. No. This concubine already doesn't know what happened. Yarrow Sulwan swore incoherently and kowtowed like a chicken pecking at rice. Leave. Yi Hongyi roared. Yarrow Sulwan crawled out of the imperial study as if she had been pardoned. When he saw that the door was tightly shut, Yi Hongyi tightly gripped the memorial in his hands. In the next second, he abruptly tore the memorial in his hands into shreds and threw it out. The entire imperial study seemed to be thrown into the air. Inside Guan Osprey Palace, Yi Junqing couldn't help but sneer as he watched Yarrow Moen continue to feed herself. Some people really don't know how heavy they are. It was very difficult for Yi Junqing to compare the current Yarrow Moen, who was full of vigor and vitality, to the pale-faced lovely person who had fallen into his arms last night. Moen always thought that Prince hated Moen. If Moen died, it's very likely that Prince would decorate the place with lanterns and banners and music. Now it seems that Moen was the one who had gauged the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty person. Yarrow Moen didn't care about Yi Junqing's ridicule and lifted her brows as she looked towards him with clear eyes. Regarding this point, this prince wants to explain. Consort Yarrow has always been right. If Consort Yarrow had fainted last night in the wilderness infested with wild wolves, this prince would definitely have left on my own and wouldn't have stopped to rest, said Yi Junqing seriously. Yarrow Moen's lips twitched. She never knew that Yi Junqing had such a venomous tongue. These words really made her blush with shame. Chapter 58. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but smile when she saw Yi Junqing's tall figure disappear from her line of sight. Your Highness, this servant feels that this esteemed prince seems to be targeting Your Highness. Your Highness should be more careful in the future. Tingyu moved closer to Yarrow Moen with Fluffy in her arms. Tingyu, remember, he's the one we need to be least wary of in the entire inner palace. Yarrow Moen put away the warmth in her eyes and turned to look towards Liu Xing. Have you found the person I asked you to find? Replying Your Highness, I've found her. Nurse Chen from the Prime Minister residence has been doing rough chores like chopping firewood and fetching water in the outer kitchen. This Nurse Chen's daughter was originally serving Big Madam, but due to a small matter, Big Madam beat her into a cripple. Later on, because the wound worsened, she didn't receive treatment in time and lost her life. Looking at it, this Nurse Chen and Big Madam have an irreconcilable grudge, replied Liu Xing solemnly. I really don't know how many blood debts Do Madam has stained her hands these past few years. Since Nurse Chen is trustworthy, let her do it. As Yarrow Moen spoke, she handed the paper bag in her sleeve to Liu Xing. Yes, Liu Xing will do it right away. Liu Xing took the paper bag and respectfully retreated. That night, when Yi Hongyi walked into Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen was in a daze as she caressed Fluffy. What happened to Zhen's baby? Outside the palace, Ting Yu originally wanted to report but was stopped by Yi Hongyi. Yarrow Moen didn't even get to speak before tears began to flow. What happened? Who bullied you? Tell Zhen. Zhen will help you. Yi Hongyi hurriedly walked to Yarrow Moen's side and held up that extremely aggrieved little face. His heart ached to the extreme. Your Majesty. Is Wan an idiot? Isn't she? Yarrow Moen cried so heartbroken that her tears rolled down like they were free. What happened? Yi Hongyi's eyes instantly turned cold as he continuously wiped away the moisture in the corners of Yarrow Moen's eyes. Its eldest sister's soul sand tree. Yarrow Moen choked out as she looked towards Yi Hongyi with glistening eyes. You went to Soul Sand Garden? The hand Yi Hongyi used to support Yarrow Moen's face couldn't help but tremble. As the name suggested, the Soul Sand Garden was planted with a type of tree known as the Soul Sand. The trees were covered with snow-white flowers that bloomed day and night, regardless of the 4 seasons. Even now, Yi Hongyi still didn't know where Yarrow Morshin had gotten these tree seeds from. He only knew that every night, she would go to Soul Sand Garden. According to Yarrow Morshin, these soul sand trees corresponded to the stars in the sky. For example, the soul sand tree directly north of the garden represented Crepe Myrtle Star, the sovereign of all stars in the sky. It was also his fate. As long as the flowers on that tree were dazzling and didn't wither, it meant that his position as emperor would forever be stable. Ever since the construction of the Soul Sand Garden, most of the other soul sand trees in the garden had dimmed and withered. Only the tree that represented his birth chart had not withered in any of the 4 seasons and had never withered. Chapter 59. Really? Your Majesty is the best. Yarrow Moen suddenly stopped crying and smiled like a flower. Her tearful smile bewitched Yi Hongyi's mind like a curse. Does Wanna really know how to observe the stars at night? Ever since Yarrow Morshin died, he had the imperial astronomer go to Soul Sand Garden, but it was to no avail. Of course I know, but Wanna has never told anyone else. Eldest sister doesn't allow it. Yarrow Moen nodded seriously and looked around. Zhen isn't anyone else, right? In the future, can Wanna tell Zhen what you see in the sky? Yi Hongyi hooked Yarrow Moen's nose and said dotingly. All right. Yarrow Moen suddenly wanted to laugh. Bullshit night observation. Back then, she had only used Soul Sand Garden to get rid of quite a few treacherous officials for Yi Hongyi, but now, there's still time. Moen will definitely let you see the beauty of Soul Sand Garden. Looking at Yarrow Moen's clear and pure beautiful eyes, Yi Hongyi carried Yarrow Moen horizontally in his arms as if he was holding the world's most precious treasure and walked towards the inner room with large strides. The view on the bed was boundless and the 2 bodies were entangled together. However, there was only one person's heart that was excited. As soon as the time passed, Yi Hongyi got up and brushed his lips against Yarrow Moen's cheek. Then, he hastily put on his dragon robe and left. Only when the nauseating smell dispersed did Yarrow Moen open her eyes. There was a deep and cold light in the depths of her eyes. She couldn't remember exactly when An Bingshan had been favored, but ever since An Bingshan had been favored, Yi Hongyi would get up and leave every day. Whether it was in Changle Palace before, Guan Osprey Palace now, or even other palaces, this habit never changed. Yarrow Moen knew that there was something fishy about this, but she wasn't in a hurry to investigate. Right now, she had more important things to do. It was still early, so Yarrow Moen was just about to close her eyes and go back to sleep when a chill suddenly assaulted her. Yarrow Moen abruptly opened her eyes and saw a woman dressed in black night clothes standing in front of her bed. Her face was as white as snow and her facial features were exquisite and exquisite. Her appearance was so beautiful that it could captivate fishes and birds. Who are you? Yarrow Moen straightened her body and looked at the woman in front of her with a stern expression. Her gaze was as firm as a blade and didn't contain any fear or timidity. Subordinate Yin Shui greets master. The woman clenched her fists and suddenly knelt on the ground as she spoke respectfully. Her voice was sweet like an oriole, yet it carried an indescribable murderous intent. "What did you call me?" Yarrow Moen looked towards the woman in astonishment. "This subordinate obeys the orders of Phoenix Feather Villa's young master. From now on, Consort Yarrow will be my master. Whatever master wants this subordinate to do, this subordinate swears to obey with my life." Yin Shui knelt on one knee and spoke word by word in a sonorous and forceful manner. "You're Yang Nansheng's man?" Yarrow Mo Wan's shapely brows knit together tightly as the image of that curvy red dress suddenly appeared in her mind. Especially that peerless beauty that was set off by that red dress, it was very hard to forget. "From now on, this subordinate belongs to Consort Yarrow." Yin Shui's voice was elegant, but it was full of dominance. "Ian, this consort wants you to disappear immediately." Yarrow Moen only wanted to test the waters, but unexpectedly, just as she finished speaking, a gust of wind blew past and there was nothing left in front of her. "Heh. Seriously?" Yarrow Mo Wn laughed involuntarily, then immediately fell asleep. She was truly too tired. During breakfast, Yarrow Moen thought back to what happened in the morning and felt like she was dreaming. While she was in a daze, Fluffy suddenly scurried onto the table and boldly licked the ginseng porridge on the table. Chapter 60. You didn't leave. Yarrow Moen was shocked that in the blink of an eye, she hadn't even seen how Yin Shui had appeared. Fluffy was already in her arms. "This subordinate has always been by Master's side. As long as Master says the word, this subordinate will naturally appear," replied Yin Shui respectfully. "Yin Shui, why are you here? Why are you calling her master?" When Yi Junqing saw the person who had attacked, he was shocked. Yin Shui acted as if she hadn't heard Yi Junqing's question and continued to stand respectfully by Yarrow Moen's side. Although it was a bit hard to believe, Yarrow Moen was very happy with Yang Nansheng's gift. "You can leave after unsealing his acupuncture point." Yarrow Moen lifted her brows as she looked towards Yi Junqing. In practically the blink of an eye, only Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing remained in the main hall. "Just what is your relationship with Yang Nansheng? How could he bear to give Yin Shui to you? What a waste of a heavenly gift." Yi Junqing felt like he was being thrown into disarray by the wind. Everything had changed. It was as if his heart had already died, but every time he saw Yarrow Moen, his heart would beat incomparably fiercely. This woman, with just the slightest curve of her lips, was enough to anger him to death. Doesn't Prince feel that protecting this consort is Yin Shui's honor? It's as if eating with this consort is Prince's good fortune from several lifetimes. Yarrow Moen stroked Fluffy arrogantly as she looked towards Yi Junqing proudly. "You really think highly of yourself, based on the fact that you've never heard of the illustrious Yin clan of the Jianghu? Anyone fortunate enough to have a descendant of the Yin clan as a hidden guard will be able to live a carefree life and die of old age. In this generation, there are only two descendants of the Yin clan, Yin Xiong and Yin Shui. Yin Xiong is currently the hidden guard of Great Shu's crown prince, Chu Morbei, while Yin Shui is protecting Phoenix Feather Manor's Yang Nansheng." Yi Junqing's words truly shocked Yarrow Moen. She had never expected Yang Nansheng to be so generous. However, when she thought about it, her smile deepened. Having a senior brother like this was truly Yi Junqing's good fortune. "Is that so? Prince, can I trouble you to look up and see if there's a halo above Moen's head? Otherwise, why does everyone like Moen so much?" Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Junqing happily. "Who said that? This king doesn't like it." The thing that Yi Junqing hated the most about Yarrow Moen was that no matter how arrogant she was, it was impossible for him to hate her. "Then Prince is not a human." Yarrow Moen put away the mischievous expression on her face and hugged Fluffy as she resentfully walked past Yi Junqing and out of Guan Osprey Palace. "What did you say?" Yi Junqing's voice reverberated through Guan Osprey Palace. At the side, Ting Yu carefully walked to Yarrow Moen's side. "Niang Niang, did you make the esteemed prince angry again?" After a few rounds of fighting, Ting Yu suddenly felt some sympathy for Yi Junqing. For better or for worse, he was a dignified prince, but now he was being bullied by his master to the point where he was losing his cool. "It's a good thing that you're angry." Yarrow Moen pursed her cherry lips, her smile deep. Now that he had Yin Shui, some things would be much easier to handle. Look at Niang Niang, it's as if Prince never got angry in the past. Muttered Ting Yu. Yarrow Moen didn't say anything. She thought about it carefully and realized that Yi Junqing had never gotten angry in front of her. No matter how excessive her request was, he would only stay silent for a moment before agreeing without hesitation, just like Yi Yilangsuan. Niang Niang, where are we going now? Asked Ting Yu as she jogged to catch up to Yarrow Moen. Chapter 61. What a beautiful garden. Niang Niang, what kind of tree is this? Ting Yu exclaimed in shock at the scenery in front of her. The Soul Sand trees in the garden were blooming with snow-colored flowers. As far as the eye could see, it was as if snow had fallen on the branches. Soul Sand trees, flowers that bloom throughout the 4 seasons. The flower fragrance is light and elegant, the petals are as white as cotton. Yarrow Moen released Fluffy Z and slowly walked into the Soul Sand garden. Niang Niang, does this garden really correspond to the stars in the sky? Asked Ting Yu curiously when she heard Yarrow Moen's explanation last night. What do you think? Yarrow Moen smiled slightly. Her gaze landed on the Soul Sand tree that represented Yi Hongyi's fate in the north. Ting Yu can't guess. Ting Yu hurried to catch up to Yarrow Moen. However, since Yarrow Moen didn't say anything, she stopped asking. Actually, what the Soul Sand tree represented didn't have much to do with her as a servant. All she had to do was protect her master, thought Ting Yu. When she arrived in front of the Soul Sand tree in the north, Yarrow Moen couldn't help but touch the tree trunk. The fine texture was like a woman's skin, flawless and smooth to the touch. Back then, she had spent a lot of effort in order for this tree to grow strong and lush, but now, Yarrow Moen took out a silver needle from her sleeve and stabbed it into the Soul Sand tree trunk. She repeated the needle about 10 times before putting it away. Niang Niang, what are you doing? Asked Ting Yu in confusion at Yarrow Moen's strange actions. You'll know in 2 days. Yarrow Moen's lips curled up slightly. Then she walked over to the nearby Soul Sand tree and sprinkled the powder she had prepared in her sleeves onto the tree. Ting Yu was confused but didn't ask further. Master had her own reasons for doing things. That night, Yarrow Moen called Yin Shui out and gave her a few instructions. Then she left Ting Yu and Liu Xing in the palace and went to Pure Flower's palace alone. Inside Pure Flower's palace, Cai Ying looked at the mess on the ground and didn't dare to go forward. Damned Yarrow Moen. She's already dead and she even implicated Ben Gong by His Majesty. She's really haunting me. Whenever she thought of Yi Hongyi's cold expression in the imperial study, Yarrow Sulwan felt her blood rush to her head. At that time, His Majesty had clearly hinted that once Yarrow Moen died, she would be the only choice to become the Empress. But now, not only did she not become the Empress, but she was also neglected. She really couldn't accept it. Your Highness, don't be angry. Perhaps His Majesty is still angry. From this servant's point of view, His Majesty still cares about Nyang Nyang, otherwise, he wouldn't have granted Nyang Nyang the title of Imperial Gui Fei. Now that the middle palace is empty, Nyang Nyang is the person in charge of the inner palace, it's enough to see how much importance His Majesty places on Nyang Nyang. Cai Ying carefully comforted. Humph. He only cared about that idiot Yarrow Moen. Every time that idiot causes trouble, he always indulges her to the heavens. This time, it was also that Yarrow Moen who mentioned Yarrow Moen. This consort only reminded His Majesty, yet His Majesty pushed the blame onto this consort. I really don't know what's so good about that fool. His Majesty seems to have lost his mind. Yarrow Sulwan threw away the teacup in her hand, her eyes filled with anger. This servant also doesn't understand. Although Consort Yarrow's appearance is a bit elegant, she's still a fool. Why does His Majesty fall in love with her? Cai Ying shook her head and asked doubtfully. Pa. What Consort Yarrow? She's just an idiot. Yarrow Sulwan clenched her teeth and cursed. Right at this time, Yarrow Moen walked into Pure Flower's palace dressed in splendid attire. What is second older sister saying? Moen seems to have heard her own name. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yarrow Sulwan with her usual innocence, her eyes smiling. Hey. You. Why did you come? Yarrow Sulwan glanced at Yarrow Mo Wan in shock and said resentfully, "Naturally it's to Miss second older sister." "What? Second older sister doesn't like Mo Wan?" Yarrow Mo Wan couldn't help but sneer when she saw the iciness on Yarrow Sulwan's face. "You can't keep pretending now." "Of course not. Where's Ting Yu, that servant girl?" "She didn't follow." Yarrow Sulwan subconsciously looked behind Yarrow Mo Wan. Seeing that no one had followed in, she relaxed. Yarrow Mo Wan's ears weren't good, but that didn't mean that the ears of those two lowly servants serving her weren't good. Mo Wan wanted to chat with second older sister and didn't want them to nag, so she told them not to follow. Chapter 62. What's wrong with second older sister? Who made you angry? Wn will go tell His Majesty right now and have His Majesty vent for second older sister. Yarrow Moan knew that Yarrow Sulwan had only come back to throw a tantrum because of Yi Hongi. "Don't. Cough cough. It was Ben Gong who accidentally broke it. Didn't you want to talk to Ben Gong? Let's go to the Imperial Garden. Cai Ying, stay here and tidy up this place." Yarrow Sulwan immediately stopped Yarrow Moan and pretended to be calm. "Sure." Yarrow Moan's lips curved into a smile, then she pulled Yarrow Sulwan out of Pureflower's palace. When Yarrow Sulwan saw the small hand wrapped around her arm, she immediately flung it off. However, things were different now, so she could only endure it. The jade rabbit rose from the east and the twilight gradually deepened. Yarrow Mo Wan deliberately pulled Yarrow Sulwan, who had a heavy heart, to the side of Jade Lake, which was the most remote place in the Imperial Garden. "Moan, second older sister heard that eldest sister left you some treasure. What was it?" Yarrow Sulwan wanted to get the relevant evidence. Based on her understanding of Yarrow Morshin, if it wasn't something extremely important, Yarrow Morshin definitely wouldn't be so mysterious. How did second older sister know? Eldest sister only told Moan. Yarrow Moan blinked and looked towards Yarrow Sulwan. When she saw Yarrow Sulwan's anxious expression, a trace of coldness flashed through her heart. Ben Gong. Ben Gong naturally knows that eldest sister also left something for Ben Gong. So Ben Gong wants to see whether the thing eldest sister left for you is better or the thing she left for Ben Gong is better. Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Yarrow Moan seriously. How come Ben Gong doesn't remember leaving something for a despicable person like you? If there was, then it would be endless hatred. The cold voice came out of Yarrow Moan's mouth like a ghost. At this moment, Yarrow Moan suddenly narrowed her eyes. Her expression was as calm as water and her clear eyes flashed with a dark green light. "You! What nonsense are you saying?" Yarrow Sulwan choked and looked towards Yarrow Moan in disbelief. She instinctively retreated. She couldn't look directly into Yarrow Moan's eyes. Heaven's evil can be forgiven, but one's own evil cannot be forgiven. "Yarrow Sulwan, you owe Ben Gong more than just one life. How are you going to return it?" The dark voice was indistinct as if it came from the distant underworld. Yarrow Moan walked towards Yarrow Sulwan step by step, the light in her eyes brightening. You're Yarrow Morshin? Impossible. Impossible. Yarrow Moan. You idiot. What the hell are they doing?" Just as Yarrow Sulwan gathered her courage and charged forward, Yarrow Moan's body suddenly floated into the air. Her gorgeous clothes fluttered in the wind, fluttering as if she was a ghost. "Ah! How could this be? You! Who are you?" Large beads of cold sweat appeared on Yarrow Sulwan's forehead. She stumbled backwards and suddenly tripped on a rock. Her entire body fell to the ground. The moonlight shone on her face, making it as pale as paper. "It's obvious, isn't it? Yarrow Sulwan, this consort won't let you off. He would not let Do Xianglan off. He definitely wouldn't let Yi Hongi off. For every person that has harmed Ben Gong will make them slowly suffer in pain until they die. Heh heh. Ha ha ha." Yarrow Mo Wan's cold gaze shot towards Yarrow Sulwan like a sharp blade. Following her hand gesture, Yarrow Mo Wan's body landed steadily on the ground and she continued to walk towards Yarrow Sulwan step by step. "Don't come near me. Don't come near me." Just as Yarrow Sulwan was about to turn around and run, her body suddenly floated in the air. Immediately after, There was the sound of someone falling into the water. Help! Help! There's a ghost. Yarrow Mo Wn only signaled for Yin Shui, who was hiding in the dark, to get her out when she saw that Yarrow Sulwan had enough of flopping around in the water. Second older sister? What happened to you? Mo Wan was just dozing off. How did you fall into the lake? Yarrow Mo Wan recovered her innocent appearance and reached out to help Yarrow Sulwan up. However, Yarrow Sulwan pushed her away as if she had seen a plague. Go away. Don't come near me. Don't come near me. You shouldn't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for showing off. It's His Majesty who can't tolerate you. If you want someone to pay with their life, you should look for His Majesty. Don't touch me. Yarrow Sulwan trembled like a drowned rat. Her feet kept kicking in Yarrow Mo Wan's direction and her hands flailed about as if she was afraid of being touched by Yarrow Mo Wan. Second older sister, what are you saying? You're already this wet. Mo Wan will send you back. The moment Yarrow Mo Wan's fingertips touched Yarrow Sulwan, she saw Yarrow Sulwan wave her hand fiercely. Then she staggered up and ran in the direction of Pure Flower's palace. When Yarrow Mo Wan saw Yarrow Sulwan's sorry figure, her lips curved into a cold smile. That kind of forbearance was still seen as showing off one's ability. Then Ben Gong should really let you all properly experience what it means to show off one's ability. Chapter 63. Under the moonlight, the enchanting face of the man in front of him seemed to be plated with a layer of silver, emitting a faint halo of light. His exquisite facial features were fair and flawless, causing all the women in the world to blush with shame. His black hair flowed down to his waist, and when the wind blew, it drew a beautiful arc. Especially his long and narrow eyes, with just a glance, it was as if his soul had been sucked out, causing him to suffocate. How could you have fainted from fright? You should have fainted because of my appearance, right? Yang Nansheng's feet touched the ground lightly. You really aren't modest at all. Even if Yarrow Moen believed that Yang Nansheng had the qualifications to be arrogant, he should still be more low-key, right? Nansheng wants to be humble, but there's really no reason for me to be humble. Yang Nansheng walked slowly to stand in front of Yarrow Moen. His demonic eyes seemed to contain light smoke as they glowed resplendently. TSK. Yarrow Moen very calmly rolled her eyes at Yang Nansheng. She finally understood just how confident Yang Nansheng was in his own beauty. Furthermore, this confidence came from the bottom of his heart and had already reached an indestructible level. What kind of attitude is that? In any case, I still gave you a big gift, so you should be thanking me. When Yang Nansheng saw that Yarrow Moen was about to turn and leave, he immediately chased after her. Thank you. Moen is still waiting for you to thank me. Yarrow Moen looked at Yang Nansheng in a matter-of-fact manner. What? What a joke. Yin Shui is the secret guard I am most proud of. Now that Nansheng has given her to you, you want me to thank you? Is there any justice in this world? Yang Nansheng's eyes widened as she looked at Yarrow Moen, who had her arms crossed in front of her chest. It's fine if you don't want to thank me. Just directly bring Yin Shui to Yi Junqing and see if he wants it or not. What do you mean? Yang Nansheng lifted her brows as she looked towards Yarrow Moen. If Yi Junqing is willing to accept your good intentions, then Moen doesn't think that such a large piece of meat pie will fall into my lap. Now that Moen has reluctantly accepted Yin Shui, it means that she has agreed to protect Yi Junqing. This is such a big favor, you better think about returning it. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yang Nansheng with a serious expression and saw that his expression had already changed slightly. You're distorting the truth. Yang Nansheng was flustered. He had originally come to ask for a favor, so how did he end up owing her a favor? Justice is in the hearts of the people, replied Yarrow Moen concisely. Ahem. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Just a moment ago, with just a few words, they were able to find the cause of Yarrow Morshin's death. Nansheng had been investigating for a long time, but he still couldn't find a single clue. However, even if Yarrow Sulwan personally admits it, there's still no evidence. Yang Nansheng exclaimed with heartfelt admiration, but at the same time, he revealed a troubled expression. Why do you need evidence? Yarrow Moen's heart trembled slightly as she asked suspiciously. There's no evidence, But that brat Junqing doesn't believe it. Yang Nansheng looked towards Yarrow Moen as if it was a matter of course. Why should I make him believe me? Yarrow Moen suddenly stopped and looked towards Yang Nansheng. If he believed that Yarrow Morshin was killed by Yi Hongyi, he wouldn't be sitting and waiting for death like this. He would definitely be able to pull himself together. Chapter 64. And then, let the esteemed prince carry the infamy of regicide for the rest of his life. You want the great hero in the eyes of the world to be a coward for the rest of his life, only able to hide in your phoenix feather manor? Moreover, what would a person do when all hope was turned to dust? Can you really guarantee that the esteemed prince won't follow Yarrow Morshin? Yarrow Moen's every word was as cold as ice. Every word was like a heavy bell ringing in Yang Nansheng's heart. He actually hadn't thought of this. Cough cough. I was just saying, what are you so anxious about? Seeing Yarrow Moen's phoenix eyes like bells, Yang Nansheng couldn't help but shrug and speak resentfully. I can't even think about it. Yarrow Moen said resentfully. Even though Yarrow Moen knew that Yang Nansheng was confused out of concern, she still couldn't help but scold him. She couldn't imagine what would happen if Yang Nansheng told Yi Junqing the truth as he had just thought. Whatever you say is right, that's fine, right? But then again, I didn't think that Yarrow Morshin would have a younger sister who's so good at hiding her strength and biding her time. You've been acting dumb for so many years, how did you manage to persevere? Yang Nansheng asked sincerely. Yin Shui, throw this bastard into the lake. Yarrow Moen had just finished speaking when she heard a splash behind her. Yarrow Moen was startled. When she looked back, Yang Nansheng had already fallen into the lake. His red dress floated on the surface of the water like a blooming red flower. It was too beautiful to behold. He really was your former master? Yarrow Moen was shocked and looked towards Yin Shui in astonishment. Yes. Yin Shui didn't say much. Cough cough. You can leave now. Yarrow Mo Wn cursed silently in her heart. In this lifetime, even if she was beaten to death, she would never give Yin Shui away. Definitely. Inside Pure Flower's palace, Cai Ying walked out of the palace gate with a gown in her hand. She just happened to see a figure stumbling over. Empress. Niang Niang, what happened to you? Cai Ying was shocked and hastily supported Yarrow Sulwan. Ghost. It's Yarrow Morshin. She had come to lock his soul. Cai Ying. Help me. Save me. Yarrow Sulwan was still in a state of shock as she dragged her wet body and staggered into Pure Flower's palace. Cai Ying knew that it was a taboo in the palace and immediately turned her hand to close the palace doors tightly. She then helped Yarrow Sulwan to sit on the chaise lounge. Your Highness. Didn't you go out with Consort Yarrow? How did it become like this? Is Consort Yarrow all right? Cai Ying anxiously asked. She knew in her heart that His Majesty cared about Yarrow Mo Wan. If something happened to Yarrow Mo Wan, it would definitely alarm His Majesty. Her family's Niang was currently speaking without restraint, so she definitely couldn't see His Majesty. Yarrow Mo Wan, don't look for me. After hearing the 3 words Yarrow Mo Wan, Yarrow Sulwan became even more agitated. She swung her hand and shoved Cai Ying to the ground, then got up and ran into the inner room. Cai Ying naturally did not dare to delay and hurriedly got up to chase after him. The next day, Yarrow Sulwan caught a cold as expected and her mind was in a daze. Seeing the imperial physician remove his hand from Yarrow Sulwan's wrist, Cai Ying hurriedly steps forward. Imperial physician Zheng, is Her Highness all right? On the bed, Yarrow Sulwan's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. She placed her hand on her forehead as she thought back to last night's events. Was her eyesight playing tricks on her? Or was Yarrow Mo Wan really possessed by a ghost? Congratulations, Your Ladyship. Your Ladyship has been pregnant for more than a month. Imperial physician Zheng took 2 steps back and bowed respectfully. You. What did you say? My master is pregnant. Cai Ying shouted excitedly without waiting for Yarrow Sulwan to react. According to the pulse, there is absolutely no mistake. Imperial physician Zheng firmly nodded his head. That's great. Oh right, then will the cold on my master's body affect the dragon seed? Cai Ying happily and excitedly walked to the side of the bed. She helped Yarrow Sulwan, who was half leaning on the bed, up. Your ladyship, don't worry, this subject will naturally prepare some mild medicine that won't affect the dragon seed. Imperial physician Zheng received the reward after reporting and then retreated. Your ladyship, you've waited for so long, you're finally pregnant with the dragon seed. Cai Ying looked towards Yarrow Sulwan excitedly. Chapter 65. Naturally, I'll tell this news to His Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan temporarily threw last night's matter to the back of her mind and was so excited that she couldn't contain herself. There were countless concubines in the harem, but very few of them gave birth to children. There was not a single male baby. If she gave birth to a boy, the position of empress would definitely be hers. Niang, you're a person with a body right now, you should rest properly. It's better for this servant to help you report. Cai Ying wanted to pull Yarrow Sulwan back but was stopped by Yarrow Sulwan. This consort must personally tell His Majesty about this matter. Give this consort a cloak, insisted Yarrow Sulwan before walking out of Pure Flower's palace. Yarrow Sulwan believed that a mother's status depended on her son. With this child, His Majesty would definitely look at her in a new light. When she arrived at Guan Osprey Palace and saw Yi Hongyi, she finally realized that the child in her womb wasn't even as precious as the animal in Yarrow Moan's arms. Don't cry. With us here, nothing will happen to Fluffy. Why isn't the imperial physician here yet? Yi Hongyi took Fluffy from Yarrow Moan's embrace and caressed her as if she was spoiling Yarrow Moan. What did second sister just say? Only cared about Fluffy and didn't hear clearly. At this moment, Yarrow Moan finally raised her teary eyes, looking very pitiful. The imperial physician has diagnosed that this consort has been pregnant with His Majesty's dragon seed for over a month. When she saw that Yi Hongyi didn't seem to care at all, Yarrow Sulwan forced down the grievance and unwillingness in her heart as she spoke clearly and forcefully. Your Majesty, what's a dragon seed? Yarrow Moan wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, then turned to look towards Yi Hongyi as she asked this. What a little fool. A dragon is my child. When are you going to get pregnant for Jin? Yi Hongyi looked at Yarrow Moan dotingly, his eyes filled with anticipation. Is still a child. I don't want to get pregnant. It's not fun being pregnant. Yarrow Moan lowered her eyes and hugged Fluffy back. A dark light flashed in the depths of her eyes as her mind was filled with the scene of Zhong-Er's tragic death. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Your Majesty, the imperial physician is here. Just as Yarrow Sulwan was about to speak again, and Bingshan walked in from outside with imperial physician Zheng following behind him. You came just in time. Quickly let us and consort Yarrow's Fluffy take a look. Although imperial physician Zheng wasn't willing, he didn't dare to tarry. He immediately placed his hand on Fluffy's paw. On the surface, imperial physician Zheng appeared to be focused, but he was secretly complaining incessantly. After all, he was an imperial physician of the imperial hospital, yet he was reduced to treating a cat. How is it? Yarrow Moan restrained the sharpness in her eyes and looked towards imperial physician Zheng anxiously. Replying to your Majesty, Fluffy is fine. She's just pregnant. Imperial physician Zheng carefully stepped back and respectfully saluted. Pregnant? Yarrow Moan looked towards Yi Hongyi suspiciously. Little fool. Fluffy was pregnant. Before long, we will be able to give birth to a bunch of kittens for our Wana. Yi Hongyi raised his eyes excitedly with a smile in his eyes. However, in Yarrow Sulwan's eyes, that smile seemed so mocking. He couldn't even compare to a beast. Really? Then Wana must take good care of Fluffy and feed her good food and drink. Don't let that iceberg face bully Fluffy again. Yarrow Moan pressed her face against Fluffy's snow-white fur, the raging waves in her heart gradually calming down. When she first heard that Yarrow Sulwan was pregnant with dragon seed, she was inwardly shocked. However, Yi Hongyi's reaction told her that Yi Hongyi most likely wouldn't be able to tolerate the child in Yarrow Sulwan's stomach. This was Yi Hongyi's most selfish aspect. Any woman he didn't approve of would have children that were bastard. Iceberg face. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yarrow Moen in astonishment. That's right, esteemed prince. He always acts like he's about to die. I don't know who he's showing it to, but in any case, Wanna doesn't like it, Fluffy doesn't like it, everyone in Guan Osprey Palace doesn't like it. Yarrow Moen shouted in an extremely exaggerated manner, causing Yi Hongyi to laugh. Junqing, you heard it all. There's finally someone in Great Chu who doesn't like that face of yours. Haha, interesting, interesting. When Yi Hongyi glanced to the side, he happened to see Yi Junqing, who had just walked in. Consort Yarrow isn't willing to see Junqing, so how would we know that Junqing would be willing to see Consort Yarrow? It's just that the two of them dislike each other. Your Majesty, it's best to change this subject brother's location as soon as possible so that Consort Yarrow won't be able to eat when she sees Junqing. Yi Junqing glared at Yarrow Moen. She pretended to be cute and silly on the surface, but in reality, she was two-faced and vicious. He really didn't know how the kind and understanding Morshine could have this kind of younger sister. Wanna was just joking. Junqing doesn't have to be so serious. It's already time for lunch, right? Fluffy is pregnant, Jin is happy. And Bingshan, go tell the Imperial Kitchen, Jin will be having lunch at Guan Osprey Palace, said Yi Hongyi with a bright smile. At the side, Yarrow Sulwan was ignored like air. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from rushing over to Yarrow Moen and strangling her to death. At this moment, she had already forgotten about the frightening scene from last night. Your Majesty, then this subject consort will take her leave. Yarrow Sulwan bowed in greeting. Ien, you know that you shouldn't walk around randomly now that you're pregnant. Go back and recuperate properly, said Yi Hongyi calmly. From start to finish, his eyes hadn't even glanced at Yarrow Sulwan. Chapter 66. Shut up. Are you blind? Can't you see that His Majesty doesn't care about this child at all? Since he doesn't care, what use is there for Ben Gong to keep him? Yarrow Sulwan was furious and reached out to hit her lower abdomen. And Bingshan's voice suddenly came from behind her. This old servant advises Niang not to make a ruckus here. If His Majesty hears this, perhaps he really will help Niang and send this child to reincarnate. And Bingshan's shrill voice was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Yarrow Sulwan didn't say anything else. She took a large step forward, raised her hand, and slapped him. And Bingshan never expected that Yarrow Sulwan would look down on him like this. He raised his hand and hit her, his face burning with pain. Dog servant, who do you think you are? You're just a eunuch, a eunuch. You actually dare to point your fingers in front of Ben Gong, and Bingshan, don't think that Ben Gong doesn't know about your good deeds. Bumping into you that day is bumping into you. Ben Gong gave you face and didn't report the matter to His Majesty, but not only are you not grateful, you're actually using your position to take revenge and make things difficult for the Prime Minister's wife. Since you don't want face, Ben Gong doesn't need to hide it for you. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame Ben Gong for being heartless. Scram. Yarrow Sulwan was furious as she roared. The corner of An Bingshan's lips twitched. A faint light flickered in his sharp eyes as he looked towards Yarrow Sulwan with gritted teeth. Niang, don't get angry and harm your body. This servant will help you back to the palace. Cai Ying had been in the Imperial Palace for many years, so she naturally knew of An Bingshan's position in the palace. In order to prevent her master from doing anything drastic, Cai Ying immediately went forward to help Yarrow Sulwan back to the palace. What are you looking at? Did you not understand Ben Gong's words? This consort is telling you to scram. Yarrow Sulwan flung Cai Ying aside as her eyes glared at him. This servant will leave. And Bingshan bit out each word as he stiffly bowed and left. Cai Ying only dared to go forward when An Bingshan faded out of Yarrow Sulwan's line of sight. Niang, this servant knows that you're not in a good mood, but there's no need to make things difficult for An Bingshan. He's a favored person in front of His Majesty. Last time, the matter in Changle Palace's shack was just a misunderstanding. Now that you're insulting him so mercilessly, I'm afraid that the matter last time will be confirmed and it'll be hard to explain in the future. Cai Ying looked towards Yarrow Sulwan worriedly. Even if I didn't scold him, do you think he would believe my explanation? Furthermore, he might not even give this consort a chance to explain. Otherwise, Mother wouldn't have suffered those 20 slaps. Rather than swallowing the insult, it's better to curse to our heart's content. Now that Ben Gong and Bingshan have become enemies, we must be on guard against that vile person. Keep an eye out in secret and find evidence of Bingshan molesting a palace maid, just in case. Yarrow Sulwan sighed fiercely before coldly warning Ting Yu. This servant understands. Don't worry, Your Highness. That's right, when you were in Guan Osprey Palace just now, did you notice anything different about Yarrow Moen? After Yarrow Sulwan calmed down, she suddenly recalled the scene from last night and a chill ran down her spine. This servant didn't notice. She's even dumber than before, not even understanding the meaning of dragon seed and having a child. Cai Ying only picked the things that Yarrow Sulwan liked to hear. Could it be? How long has it been since Yarrow Morshin died? Asked Yarrow Sulwan in a low voice. Replying Your Highness, in another 5 days, it will be her chichi. Cai Ying didn't know why her master would suddenly mention Yarrow Morshin, so she carefully looked around before replying. Ever since the Empress died, all topics related to the Empress had been classified as taboo. Thankfully, we didn't miss chichi. Cai Ying, help this consort find a Daoist priest with profound Daoist skills. Remember, don't let anyone see it, ordered Yarrow Sulwan coldly. This servant understands. Although Cai Ying didn't know what her master's intentions were, she still nodded in obedience. Chapter 67. Did Yarrow Sulwan really say that? Replying Your Highness, this servant heard everything clearly from the shadows. Imperial Gui Fei found out that Empress Chichi was in 5 days, so she personally told Cai Ying to find a profound Daoist priest, reported Liu Xingha. She really is considerate. Since she wants to find a Daoist priest, do you know what to do? Yarrow Moen's brows lifted slightly as her lips curved into a smile. He hadn't expected that Yarrow Sulwan's willpower would be so strong that she hadn't been scared last night. But that was also good. If she had collapsed just like that, it wouldn't have been enough to vent her anger. Liu Xing understands. Liu Xing understood his master's intentions and nodded heavily. Has there been any movement in the Prime Minister residence these past 2 days? Wet Nurse Chen has been acting according to plan. Big Madam's body is clearly in a dispirited state, so she naturally doesn't have the strength to cause trouble for Su Muzi and Yarrow Yu. On the other hand, the method Master taught Yarrow Yu has been extremely effective. Right now, no one in the residence dares to provoke Su Muzi and her son, reported Liu Xing. That brat is very clever. He can hear the essence of things even when he's obedient. Yarrow Moen laughed in disappointment. At this time, Ting Yu had already finished preparing dinner. You and Ting Yu can withdraw. There's no need for you to serve here. When Yarrow Moen smelled that familiar scent, she waved her hand lightly and Liu Xing and Ting Yu respectfully withdrew. The first thing Yi Junqing did when he entered was glare fiercely at Yarrow Moen before sitting down at the table. Prince seems to hold a grudge against Moen. For once, Yarrow Moen didn't carry Fluffy to the table. Instead, she obediently lay down on the chaise lounge. That's why you should reflect on yourself, said Yi Junqing in annoyance as he picked up his bowl to eat. Yen, Moen also wants to reflect on herself. Yarrow Moen's sincere tone attracted Yi Junqing's attention. But Moen thought about it and decided to forget about it. If Prince falls in love with Moen again after reflecting on yourself, it would be troublesome. Yi Junqing hadn't expected Yarrow Moen to say something so shocking. He spat out a mouthful of ginseng porridge and then started coughing violently. Moen said, "What Prince is thinking?" Yarrow Moen blinked innocently as she looked towards Yi Junqing. Yarrow Moen looked at the man in front of her with a face full of black lines. She suddenly missed his affectionate appearance in the past. Regarding this, you can rest assured. This king will only love one woman in this life. Also, that woman definitely isn't you. Yi Junqing wiped his lips with a handkerchief, then sat upright and still as he spoke righteously. Don't be so sure. Yarrow Moen smiled knowingly when she saw how confident Yi Junqing was. She picked up a mushroom and placed it in Yi Juanqing's bowl. Why are you picking food for this prince? This prince doesn't want it. Yi Juanqing acted as if he was trying to avoid it as much as possible as he returned the mushroom back to Yarrow Moen. This is the first time Prince has picked food for Moen. Moen is overwhelmed by the favor. Yarrow Moen happily put the shiitake mushroom into her mouth. It was fragrant and sweet. You're so smart, so you should know who the woman this prince loves is. In order to prevent Yarrow Moen from misunderstanding, Yi Juanqing was silent for a moment before replying solemnly. Eldest sister, it's not just Moen, the entire Great Chu probably knows that the esteemed prince has feelings for the current empress. That day at the esteemed prince residence, Moen also saw it. Prince's painting skills aren't bad. However, eldest sister is already dead. Morsheen isn't dead. At least she's still here with this prince. Before Yarrow Moen could finish speaking, Yi Juanqing abruptly stood up and placed a hand on his chest. After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and left. As Yarrow Moen watched Yi Juanqing's figure disappear into the distance, tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Although they had been separated by a lifetime, it was as breathtaking as the first time they had seen each other. The next day, when Yi Hongyi walked into Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen went to greet him happily. Why are you so happy? Yi Hongyi very naturally pulled Yarrow Moen over and pulled her into his embrace. At the time, he had only been in the mood, but he hadn't expected that Yarrow Moen seemed to have been brewing it for years. She couldn't bear to quit after tasting it. Chapter 68. Oh. Then Zhen wants to hear what Zhenwana has discovered. Yi Hongyi had originally been skeptical about Yarrow Moen's ability to look at the sky at night. He had only said those words perfunctorily to Yarrow Moen and also to encourage her. Then Your Majesty, accompany Wanna to Soul Sand Garden. Is that all right? Yarrow Moen pulled Yi Hongyi with both hands and forcefully pulled him up from the chaise lounge. All right. Yi Hongyi also wanted to walk around, so he did as Yarrow Moen wanted. The wind blew and the fragrance of Soul Sand Garden filled the air. The fragrance was pure and elegant, relaxing. Yarrow Moen pulled Yi Hongyi into Soul Sand Garden and pointed at the large patch of soul sand trees on the left. Your Majesty, this patch of soul sand trees corresponds to the 7 mansions of the vermilion bird in the sky. The one on the right corresponds to the 7 mansions of the black tortoise. Your Majesty, come quickly. The one in front is the 7 mansions of the azure dragon and this one is the 7 mansions of the white tiger. The soul sand trees here are divided into 4 areas, each corresponding to the stars in the sky. This one is the crepe myrtle star in the sky. The 4 mansions are all centered around it. Yarrow Moen pulled Yi Hongyi around Soul Sand Garden and finally pulled him to the soul sand tree on the north side. Wanna knows so much. Yi Hongyi was shocked by the constellations Yarrow Moen mentioned and exclaimed. Wanna has only learned this one and wants to learn it well. Otherwise, they'll really think Wanna is an idiot. Even if Wanna is an idiot, it's only Your Majesty's idiot. Once Wanna truly learns the art of stargazing, let's see who still dares to call Wanna an idiot. Yarrow Moen deliberately beat around the bush to divert Yi Hongyi's attention. That's right. You belong to Zhen alone. Yi Hongyi pulled Yarrow Moen into his arms. When he looked up, his body shook. The left petal of the soul sand tree in front of him had withered and was showing signs of withering. He remembered that this had never happened before. This soul sand tree that represented his fate had always been full of flowers and flourished with each passing day. Why is it like this? Wanna, don't you think there's something wrong with this tree? Yi Hongyi's voice gradually deepened as an unconcealable worry appeared on his face. There definitely won't be as many flowers on this tree as there were before. Yarrow Moen's eyes turned cold when she finally took the bait. Then, she said innocently, Why? Yi Hongyi lowered his gaze to look towards Yarrow Moen. It's because the crepe myrtle star in the sky isn't as bright as before, but the Kuei star in the white tiger constellation is much brighter. So that tree is definitely more luxuriant than before. As Yarrow Moen spoke, she pointed at the soul sand tree not too far away. After fertilizing it, It naturally grew better. That's right. Yi Hongyi walked slowly towards the soul sand tree that Yaromo Wn was pointing at, his eyes gradually turning cold. White Tiger is a general star. Now that the general star is flourishing and the emperor star is dim, could it be that there are generals in the court who are disloyal? Who could it be? The first person that popped into Yi Hongyi's mind was Yi Junqing. However, he quickly rejected it. Yi Junqing was no longer a military general. Among all the generals in the court, the one with the most troops should be general of the left, Huan Heng. Could it be him? Your Majesty, could it be that you don't believe Wn's words? Yaromoan gave Yi Hongyi enough time to think before taking a few steps forward. She knew all too well how difficult it had been for Yi Hongyi to obtain the throne, so he naturally wouldn't let go of anyone that could threaten his imperial authority. Based on her understanding of Yi Hongyi, someone was going to be out of luck. Yaromoan laughed inwardly. No. Wana said it very well, really. It seems that Zhen was right to bestow Soul Sand Garden to Wn. In the future, you have to promise Zhen to carefully look at these trees. You have to tell Zhen if there's any abnormality, alright? Because of Yarrow Morshin, Yi Hongyi firmly believed in astronomical phenomena. Yaromoan knew that this would be the result. At that time, the astronomical phenomena she spoke of had never been inaccurate. Cai Ying used 3 days of time to finally find a Daoist priest of virtue and prestige. At this time, Yarrow Sulwan was currently examining the Daoist priest in front of her. He had white beard and silver hair. He had the bearing of an immortal. White brow kowtows in salute to Imperial Gui Fei. The Daoist priest called White Brow lightly swept his horsetail whisk and clasped his hands together as he spoke respectfully. Great Master is too courteous. Cai Ying, sit. Yarrow Sulwan nodded slightly, then ordered Cai Ying to bring a chair over. Then this humble Daoist will respectfully obey. May I ask why Imperial Gui Fei has called this humble Daoist over? White Brow slowly sat down, his gaze as sharp as a blade. To tell the truth, Ben Gong has encountered some very strange things recently, so Ben Gong wants to ask Daoist, do people really have ghosts after they die? Yarrow Sulwan still felt uneasy when she recalled what happened that night. If one wishes to connect with the gods, one must split the form of metal and water. When the form is split, one will naturally see the 3 souls and 7 spirits within the body. The 3 souls are called one birthlight, pure yang qi. The Daoist priest was rambling on when he was interrupted by Yarrow Sulwan. Cough. Can Daoist priest explain it more simply? Ben Gong is a bit confused. Yarrow Sulwan patiently said. Oh, then that's easy. After people die, they naturally have ghosts. White Brow let out a sigh and nodded. Isn't this a bit too simple? Ben Gong wants to know if there's such a thing as malicious spirits possessing the body. Also, if it's a ghost that was wrongfully killed, would it come back to seek revenge? Yarrow Sulwan pointed out the main point. Chapter 69. This humble Daoist is good at exorcising ghost. Naturally there's a way. Bai Mai raised his brows as if he had a card up his sleeve. May I know how Daoist priest needs this consort to help with exorcising ghosts? Yarrow Sulwan asked impatiently as light flickered in her eyes. Imperial Gui Fei only needs to write down that person's birth date and 8 characters for this humble Daoist. This humble Daoist will naturally return to prepare the incantation. May I ask how long has it been since the person Imperial Gui Fei mentioned died? And where does Imperial Gui Fei want to place the ghost? Bai Mai asked seriously. In another 2 days, it'll be that person's chichi. Cai Ying, go get a pen and paper. If Daoist priest can make that ghost's soul scatter and disappear, this consort will naturally thank you heavily, said Yarrow Sulwan fiercely with excitement in her eyes. Within chichi, that soul definitely hasn't gone far. If this humble Daoist can perform the incantation at the place where this person died, then this humble Daoist has some confidence, said Bai Mai meaningfully. Alright then, Daoist priest should return to prepare. 2 days later, this consort will naturally prepare a place for Daoist priest to perform the incantation. Yarrow Sulwan casually handed the paper she had just written to Bai Mai and turned to look towards Cai Ying. At her side, Cai Ying had already prepared the banknotes and handed them to Bai Mai before sending him off. When Cai Ying returned, Yarrow Sulwan was still immersed in excitement. She suddenly couldn't wait to see the scene of Yarrow Morshin disappearing. Just thinking about it made her feel extremely satisfied. Niang Niang, are you really planning on letting that Daoist priest perform the incantation at the former site of the Cold Palace? If someone sees it, it won't be a joke. Cai Ying worriedly walked to Yarrow Sulwan's side and reminded her carefully. That place is remote, who would go there for no reason? Also, the incantation will be performed at night, so even less people will go there. Don't worry, this consort knows what to do. Yarrow Sulwan had already made up her mind. Cai Ying knew that it was useless to say more, so she didn't say anything else. In Guan Osprey Palace, Yin Shui repeated everything she had heard to Yarrow Moen without missing a single word. Even though you're pregnant, you still don't know how to accumulate some good karma for yourself. Go tell Bai Mai to listen to orders and he won't be lacking in benefits. Yarrow Moen caressed Fluffy in her arms. Her round and smooth cardamom-colored nails and Fluffy's snow-colored fur contrasted beautifully. Yin Shui obeys. That's right, where has the esteemed prince been these past 2 days? Although Yi Hongyi hadn't left behind any clues, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall. Given Yi Juanqing's intelligence, he would naturally notice something was off after staying in the imperial palace for a long time. Replying master, the esteemed prince strolls around the imperial garden during the day and enters Changle Palace after midnight. He stays there until the hour of the yin before coming out, reported Yin Shui truthfully. Got it. You can leave now. Yarrow Moen's eyes darkened and the hand she was using to stroke Fluffy paused. Yi Junqing was far more sentimental than she had imagined. But Junqing, you still don't understand Morshin. After Yin Shui withdrew, Tingyu jogged into the main hall. Niang Niang, this servant ran into the esteemed prince outside earlier. He told this servant to bring the meals to his room starting from today. From now on, he doesn't want to eat at the same table as Niang Niang. Tingyu repeated Yi Juanqing's words to Yarrow Moen. Are you his palace maid? Yarrow Moen asked calmly. No. Tingyu shook her head. Then who cares what he says? Help Ben Gong out for a walk. Yarrow Moen lifted her brows as she looked towards Tingyu, then got up to leave Guan Osprey Palace. Ever since she saw Yi Hongyi in Guan Osprey Palace that day, Yarrow Sulwan finally saw Yi Hongyi step into Pure Flowers Palace again. This concubine kowtows in salute to your majesty. Yarrow Sulwan was extremely happy as she waited at the palace gates, a trace of anticipation flashing through her eyes. Beloved concubine is pregnant with the dragon seed, so how could you be so careless? In the future, let's dispense with all these unnecessary formalities. Jin's child is the most important. Yi Hongyi took a step forward and placed Yarrow Sulwan's hand in his palm. His eyes were filled with affection. Yarrow Sulwan was overwhelmed by this favor and looked towards Yi Hongyi in disbelief. At the side, An Bingshan followed behind resentfully and didn't say anything. It's rare for your majesty to care about this concubine so much. This concubine can't thank you enough. Yarrow Sulwan was so moved that hot tears welled up in her eyes. Jin knows that Jin made you suffer in the past 2 days. It was Jin's negligence. Beloved consort, don't take it to heart. Jin was also annoyed in the past 2 days. Yi Hongyi pulled Yarrow Sulwan to the table and lightly patted the back of Yarrow Sulwan's hand, his eyes filled with tenderness. This concubine wouldn't dare. However, if your majesty has something on your mind, there's no harm in telling this concubine. It's not good to keep it bottled up inside, said Yarrow Sulwan in a gentle voice. It's all because of those matters in court. Although the esteemed prince has handed over the military power, Left General Huan Heng still holds a large number of troops. Jin can't do nothing. However, Huan Heng has always been cautious. If Jin seized his military power for no reason, it would be hard to hide it from the public. It's really a headache. Yi Hongyi frowned and shook his head with a sigh. Your Majesty suspects Huan Heng? Yarrow Sulwan's heart trembled slightly. If she remembered correctly, before Yi Junqing had handed over the military power, Yi Hongyi had relied on Huan Heng quite a bit. This was also the root of Huan Qi's arrogance. Although Yarrow Sulwan didn't understand why Yi Hongyi would suddenly suspect Huan Heng, this was a good thing for her. Chapter 70. It's more than just difficult. This is a great worry in Jin's heart. In the entire imperial court and inner palace, there probably isn't anyone who can help Jin resolve this problem. Yi Hongyi's black eyes swept over Yarrow Sulwan as he sighed. Your Majesty, Niang Niang, dinner is ready, said Tingyu carefully. This matter will be resolved eventually. This concubine will accompany you to eat first. Yarrow Sulwan was just about to announce the dishes when Yi Hongyi stopped her. Jin doesn't have an appetite but was worried, so I came to see you. And Bingshan, set up the carriage to the imperial study. Before Yarrow Sulwan could urge him to stay, Yi Hongyi had already left Pureflower's palace. This concubine respectfully sends off your Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan's joyful expression instantly turned gloomy and gloomy. She felt a bit unwilling. Niang Niang, His Majesty has left. Tingyu reached out to help Yarrow Sulwan back to the table. Niang Niang, His Majesty seemed to be implying something. Do you think Ben Gong didn't hear it? His Majesty just wants to borrow Ben Gong's hand to give Consort Chen a groundless crime and use that as a reason to strip Huan Heng of his military power. Yarrow Sulwan picked up a teacup and smiled coldly. Since Niang Niang already knew, why didn't you agree to His Majesty? Tingyu looked towards her master in confusion. What kind of person is Huan Heng? To put it nicely, he's cautious, but to put it bluntly, he's scheming. Ben Gong doesn't want to get involved in this mess. Furthermore, father doesn't like mother anymore. If Ben Gong wins, there might not be the Empress throne, but if I lose, the consequences are unimaginable. Yarrow Sulwan swirled the lid of the teacup in her hand and brushed aside a few tender leaves floating on top of the tea before taking a sip. The full moon rose in the east and the twilight gradually deepened. Yarrow Moen stretched lazily on the chaise lounge, then dismissed Tingyu and Liu Xing. Just as she was about to return to the inner chambers to rest, she saw Yi Junqing walk in with a dark expression. When Tingyu saw this, she very consciously retreated behind Yarrow Moen. Yarrow Sulwan, Ben Gong is looking for you. The clear voice was indescribably cold. Yi Junqing stood in front of Yarrow Sulwan with his hands clasped behind his back. It's just a meal. Prince isn't going to kill me, right? Yarrow Sulwan knew that Yi Junqing was angry that Tingyu didn't bring him food. All of you, back off. Yi Junqing ignored Yarrow Moen's teasing and lowered his voice. When Yarrow Moen saw his serious expression, she restrained the ridicule in her eyes and waved her hand to dismiss Tingyu and Liu Xing. Now that Yin Shui was secretly protecting them, they weren't afraid that their master would be bullied. They all obeyed and left, closing the palace doors tightly behind them. Why are you trying to sow discord between His Majesty and General of the Left? Yi Junqing got straight to the point. Moen doesn't know what Prince is talking about. Yarrow Moen was startled for a moment before she slowly replied. His Majesty gifted you Soul Sand Garden and this is how you repay His Majesty. When Yi Junqing saw that Yarrow Moen was about to leave, he immediately blocked Yarrow Moen's path. His eyes were as cold as ice. Your Highness, are you expressing your loyalty now? However, Prince has chosen the wrong target. You should go to His Majesty and tell him that Moen is a big swindler, the biggest liar in the world. Her clear voice was as cold as ice. Yarrow Moen's beautiful eyes were as deep as a lake and the light in them seemed to have the power to freeze everything. The temperature in the main hall instantly dropped to freezing point. At this moment, an indescribable hatred welled up from the bottom of her heart. She didn't know how she had poisoned Yi Junqing to the point that he would still speak up for Yi Hongyi after suffering so much. When she saw the anger on Yi Junqing's face, she hated herself to the extreme. I was just asking, there's no need to get so agitated, right? When Yi Junqing saw that Yarrow Moen's eyes were about to overflow with tears, he couldn't help but choke. You can't even ask. If you have the ability, go investigate it yourself. If you don't, then don't make a fuss here. Moen is tired, go away. Yarrow Moen retorted harshly, then walked back into the bedroom without looking back. "Hey, I still haven't eaten yet," Yi Junqing shouted from behind her. "Then fend for yourselves." Accompanied by this sentence was a loud sound of a door being slammed. Yi Junqing's lips twitched as he turned to stone. "How did you offend her?" A gentle but not sinister voice rang out. Yang Nansheng gracefully appeared behind Yi Junqing. He had originally come to get revenge on Yarrow Moen, but after seeing what had just happened, Yang Nansheng felt that he could endure it a little longer. "You stepped on her tail. Go away, don't block this prince's way." Yi Junqing turned around angrily and glared at Yang Nansheng with boundless resentment in his heart. "Can't you be a little nicer every time you see me? I didn't step on your tail. Hey, don't walk so fast, wait for me." As Yang Nansheng complained, Yi Junqing had already stepped out of Guan Osprey Palace. Chapter 71. Why stay here and suffer? Come back to Phoenix Feather Manor with me. Yang Nansheng repeated this many times. Say something that's possible. His pitch-black eyes were as deep as the boundless ocean as he looked at the twinkling stars in the sky. The 28 constellations revolved rhythmically. He remembered that Mo Xin had said that the moon waxed and waned, and the constellations also brightened and darkened. This was the law of nature. The so-called stargazing at night was just a story made up by those who had the intention. That girl's really angry. Why don't you go apologize to her? Yang Nansheng's eyes flickered devilishly. This is even more impossible than the previous one. Yi Junqing furrowed his brows as the anger in Yarrow Moen's eyes appeared in his mind. Then I'll just shut up. In any case, that's what you're thinking. Yang Nansheng decided to just lie down on the glazed tiles on the roof with his hands behind his head. His clothes were spread out like a red lotus, making him look devilishly beautiful. This prince really doesn't understand why Yarrow Moen would do this. Yi Hongyi treats her even better than Mo Xin, so well that even this prince can't stand it. Yet she's trying to sow discord between Yi Hongyi and the left general, shaking the foundations of Great Chu. Why? Do you think? Could it be related to Mo Xin? Yi Junqing couldn't understand and turned to look towards Yang Nansheng. Cough cough. Your head is filled with Yarrow Moen. I think you've been poisoned. Could it be that Yarrow Junting and Huan Heng had a conflict? Yang Nansheng immediately led Yi Junqing's thoughts to the other extreme. If he really guessed something, the consequences would be unthinkable. Yarrow Moen's warning was still ringing in his ears. Perhaps, but do you think? Should I warn Yi Hongyi? Yi Junqing knew what Yarrow Moen cared about the most in this life. If you dare tell Yi Hongyi, I'll break off all relations with you. Yarrow Moen won't let you off even if she becomes a ghost. Stay here and enjoy the cold wind, I'm not going to wait on you. Yang Nansheng's eyes were abnormally cold as he suddenly sat up and glared at Yi Junqing angrily. Then he got up and soared into the air to leave. Even after Yang Nansheng's figure disappeared into the night, Yi Junqing could still feel the chill he left behind. I'm just saying, there's no need to get so worked up. The moment Yi Junqing finished speaking, he heard someone say from the distant horizon, you can't even say. Yi Junqing felt a chill run through his body and he immediately turned around to return to his room. It was too strange. Within Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen was sitting at the table. Her clear eyes were focused on the surface of the table, but it seemed as if she could see even further through it. On the 7th day of the 7th month, my son, rest in peace. Mother, sister, don't worry, I will remember this blood feud in my heart. I won't have to wait too long, I swear. Empress, this is what you wanted. When Tingyu walked in, Yarrow Moen quickly restrained the sorrow in her eyes and her abyss-like eyes gradually calmed down. During the dinner, Yi Junqing tried several times to find an opportunity to speak with Yarrow Moen, but each time, he was blocked by that icy expression of hers. Even after the dinner ended, Yi Junqing still hadn't managed to speak with Yarrow Moen. Fluffy seems pretty well behaved today. When Yi Junqing saw that Yarrow Moen was about to get up to leave, he immediately reached out to Fluffy and praised her against his will. Tingyu, it's rare for the esteemed prince to like Fluffy. Just hold Fluffy and keep Prince company. This consort is tired. Yarrow Moen didn't even look at Yi Junqing, so she handed Fluffy to Tingyu and turned to leave. Hey, what kind of attitude is that? If it wasn't for. Yi Junqing didn't finish his sentence. If it wasn't for the fact that today was Mo Xin's chichi, he wouldn't have coaxed her. He really didn't know how to explain things to Mo Xin later. Besides Yi Hongyi, Mo Xin cared about this younger sister the most. The cold moonlight poured down like water, enveloping the entire imperial palace. The wind picked up and the tree branches swayed. The moonlight shone through the branches and leaves, casting mottled shadows. A simple and crude wing had been built in the former location of the cold palace. Yarrow Moen pushed open the door and entered. Every step she took seemed to exhaust all of her strength. Tears streamed down her face. Her zhong'er had died so miserably. Just thinking about it made her heart feel like it had been stabbed by a curved knife. Master, it's ready. Yin Shui lit the white candles and returned to Yarrow Moen's side. Yarrow Moen didn't say anything. She slowly knelt on the ground and raised the paper one by one. As the flames flickered, Yarrow Moen's face seemed like a supreme existence from hell. After about 15 minutes, Yin Shui slowly walked forward and leaned over to Yarrow Moen's ear. Master, they're here. When Yarrow Moen heard this, she raised the last piece of paper and got up. Her cold eyes stared at the bluestone path outside the door. Yin Shui put away the white candles and waved her hand, scattering the ashes. Act according to the plan, said Yarrow Moen coldly. Then with a gust of wind, Yarrow Moen and Yin Shui disappeared at the same time. Almost at the same time, Yarrow Sulwan led Daoist priest Bai Mai into the side room. Behind them, Cai Ying carried a pile of magic tools and followed cautiously. It's here? Asked Bai Mai suspiciously as he raised his eyes and looked around. That's right, that ghost died here when it was alive. That was the happiest day of her life. Yarrow Sulwan naturally wouldn't forget it. That's good, this humble Daoist will cast the spell here. Imperial Gui Fei, please move back. Bai Mai turned around and took the magic tools from Cai Ying's hands. He placed them on the north side, then raised his horsetail whisk and muttered to himself. Behind him, Yarrow Sulwan subconsciously held Cai Ying's hand. Her beautiful eyes looked around from time to time, and there was more or less some fear in her heart. The wind gradually picked up, making the side room chilly. Bai Mai fiercely raised his horsetail whisk. Suddenly, the candles on both sides of the magic tools went out, and the entire side room instantly became pitch black. Daoist priest. How could this be? Yarrow Sulwan's beautiful eyes suddenly widened, and the hand holding Cai Ying's hand tightened. This ghost's resentment is too heavy. Don't worry, Imperial Gui Fei, this humble Daoist naturally has a way to subdue it, said Bai Mai. He lit the candles, waved his horsetail whisk again, and muttered. Just at this time, a whirlwind blew in the room. The ashes on the ground rose with the wind, slowly forming a whirlpool. Chapter 72. Niang Niang, shouldn't we leave? Cai Ying's little face was deathly pale as she stuck closely to Yarrow Sulwan's side. Daozhong, stay here and cast the spell. Once you're done, this consort will come back to pick you up. Cai Ying, help this consort leave. Yarrow Sulwan felt a chill run down her spine and her legs trembled as she walked. You want to leave? Yarrow Sulwan, give me back my life, give me back my life. In the darkness, Yarrow Mo Wan softly called out. Ah, Cai Ying. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? It was her. It was Yarrow Morshin. Taoist priest. Help. Yarrow Sulwan hugged Cai Ying, her complexion deathly pale and bloodless. When she looked back, blood had already seeped out from the corners of her white brows and lips. Taoist master, what do we do now? Yarrow Sulwan screamed mournfully as if the person who died was her. At this time, the ashes in the room suddenly gathered together and rushed towards Yarrow Sulwan's lower abdomen. In almost an instant, everything returned to normal. Yarrow Sulwan stood there in shock, speechless. Your Highness, are you all right? Cai Ying resisted the fear in her heart and supported Yarrow Sulwan with both hands. Daoist priest. Yarrow Sulwan trembled as she turned to look at Bai Mai. This humble Daoist is ashamed to have failed Niang's trust. Niang, don't worry, that ghost has already reincarnated, it's just that. White Brow looked at Yarrow Sulwan's abdomen meaningfully, hesitating to speak. But what? Hurry up and say it. Could it be that you want Ben Gong to die of anxiety? When she heard that Yarrow Morshin had reincarnated, Yarrow Sulwan instantly became a bit more spirited. It's just that the malicious spirit's resentment is too deep. In this life, it still wants to be entangled with the imperial noble consort, so just now, the ghost has already reincarnated into the fetus in the Empress's womb. Bai Mai revealed a troubled expression and said in a low voice. What did you say? Yarrow Morshin, reincarnated into this Empress stomach? How could this be? How could this be? Come out. Come out. Bai Mai's words were like a bolt from the blue that struck Yarrow Sulwan's mind. At this moment, her mind was completely blank. Her hands continuously patted her stomach as if she had gone insane. Niang, don't be impatient. After reincarnating, she won't be her anymore. Actually, Niang doesn't need to take it to heart. White Brow did his best to pacify her, but all he received was a barrage of curses from Yarrow Sulwan. Fraud. Demon Dao. Didn't you say that you could turn her into ashes? How could this be? You bastard. Ben Gong is going to kill you. Yarrow Sulwan fiercely charged towards Bai Mai but was stopped by Cai Ying. Daoist priest, you should remember the way you came. You should leave first. Cai Ying said anxiously. Imperial Gui Fei, don't panic. It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. This is also a good thing. Before Bai Mai left, he didn't forget to provoke Yarrow Sulwan. Scram. Yarrow Sulwan roared with all her might. In the shadows, Yarrow Moen looked towards Yarrow Sulwan coldly, a trace of coldness flashing through her eyes. Yarrow Sulwan, this is only the beginning. This consort is going to give you a great gift now. I believe you'll definitely like it. On the way back to the palace, Yarrow Moen suddenly saw flames flickering in Changle Palace. Yin Shui, go take a look. Yarrow Moen's beautiful eyes froze. She had already guessed who it was. As expected, when Yin Shui led Yarrow Moen into Changle Palace, Yi Juanqing's cold and lonely figure appeared in front of them. Master? Yin Shui asked. Yarrow Moen waved her hand and respectfully withdrew. Morshin, are you doing well up in the sky? You truly are heartless, leaving just like that, not even willing to see Junqing one last time. That night at Rippling Waves Pavilion, didn't you say that you liked listening to Juanqing's flute? Junqing even promised you that the next family banquet, he would definitely play another tune for you. Why didn't you wait for Junqing? It's already been 49 days. Do you know how Junqing has been passing these days? It's truly more painful than death. Morshin, don't worry, Junqing won't harm the people you care about even in death. It's just, is he really worth it? I almost forgot, your younger sister really is a headache-inducing fellow. She clearly isn't stupid, but she's better at pretending than anyone else. She probably even fooled you. Junqing really suspects that the two of you were born from the same mother, that temperament. The grand esteemed Prince of Great Chu is actually speaking ill of others behind their backs. Prince's personality isn't necessarily any better than Moen's. Yarrow Moen suddenly interrupted Yi Juanqing's words and walked forward leisurely. Why are you here? When Yi Juanqing heard this, his expression abruptly changed. That's why not having martial arts isn't important, what's important is having a good hidden guard. Yin Shui, don't you agree? Yarrow Moen ignored Yi Juanqing's murderous gaze and lifted her chin slightly. Thank you, Master, for your praise. Yin Shui's voice drifted out, but it was impossible to tell where it came from. That damned Yang Nansheng. Yi Juanqing suddenly really wanted to drag Yang Nansheng out and give him a good beating. Right at this time, Yarrow Moen had already kicked away the underworld paper in front of Yi Juanqing with an indifferent expression. What are you doing? Yi Juanqing abruptly pushed Yarrow Moen away and picked up a fire. Chapter 73. How can you insult Morshin like this? She's your older sister. Yi Juanqing's ruthless eyes were like those of a ferocious tiger coming down the mountain. Yarrow Moen could clearly see the sparkling light in those eyes. This is the result of Prince lighting the hell paper. Prince should think about it carefully. Yarrow Moen's expression didn't change as she turned to leave. Her slender figure seemed especially lonely. Yi Juanqing would never know that the moment Yarrow Moen turned to leave, tears soaked her cheeks and her heart shattered into ice. As he watched Yarrow Moen silently leave, Yi Juanqing felt incredibly stifled. Only when Yarrow Moen's figure faded out of his sight did he lower his eyes to look at his own palm. Why did he slap her? Why did he slap her? Yi Juanqing was endlessly vexed. The next day, Yarrow Moen called Liu Xing after breakfast. Niang, what instructions do you have? Liu Xing stood respectfully at Yarrow Moen's side. Tell Nurse Chen that it's time. Also inform Yarrow Xiongfu that this consort will be returning today, said Yarrow Moen indifferently. When she lowered her eyes, she caressed Fluffy. Yi Juanqing's slap had incited her anger, so someone had to extinguish it. Yes. Liu Xing accepted the order and left. Ting Yu, in a moment, go to the Imperial kitchen and bring some food to the East Wing. From today onwards, if the esteemed prince doesn't eat in the main hall, prepare a separate portion for him. Yarrow Moen caressed Fluffy without a trace of emotion in her eyes. This servant will do as you bid. Ting Yu nodded. Although Yarrow Moen's face was expressionless, Ting Yu could feel that Master was very angry today. The consequences would be severe. Someone was probably going to be unlucky. When Yarrow Moen appeared in the Imperial study, Yi Hongyi was extremely surprised. Wanna, why are you here? Perhaps it was because of his inner demons, but no matter how much Yi Hongyi doted on Yarrow Moen, he didn't dare take half a step into Guan Osprey Palace after Yarrow Moen's death yesterday. From what Yi Hongyi knew, the ghosts that returned to the Soul Night were most likely looking for their relatives. Wanna wants to ask your majesty for a favor. Yarrow Moen bounced into Yi Hongyi's embrace and pressed her cheek against his chest. An indecipherable light flashed through her eyes. One day, she would personally witness the moment his heart stopped beating. Say it, Jun will agree no matter what it is, even if you want the stars in the sky. Yi Hongyi wrapped his arm around Yarrow Moen's slender waist as usual and placed her body between his knees. Wan wants to go back to Prime Minister Fu. I want to go see little brother, alright? Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Hongyi in a spoiled manner. I thought it was something important. Of course, Jun will order the esteemed prince to accompany you in a moment. Yi Hongyi lightly scratched Yarrow Moen's nose as he laughed heartily. No. Wanna doesn't like his company. Wanna has Ting Yu and Liu Xing. Yarrow Moen pouted her peach-red little mouth, her expression displeased. It seems like Jun's Wanna really hates the esteemed prince. All right. Then let Jun's have Jun's imperial bodyguards escort him. Jun doesn't wish for Jun's little darling to suffer even the slightest mishap. Yi Hongyi agreed very straightforwardly. Thus, under the escort of Yi Hongyi's personal bodyguards, Yarrow Moen returned to Yarrow Xiongfu. Older sister Wanna. The moment they entered Prime Minister Fu, Yarrow Yu ran over like a monkey and grabbed Yarrow Moen's hand, extremely happy. Yarrow Moen also liked this little brother from the bottom of her heart. This old servant kowtows in salute to Consort Yarrow. Consort Yarrow doesn't know, but little young master has been waiting at the door ever since he got the news. He's been waiting for almost 4 hours. Yarrow too looked at Yarrow Yu dotingly with a kind expression. This subject kowtows in salute to Consort Yarrow. Yarrow Jun Ting arrived late from behind. Father, quickly get up, this daughter can't accept this. Yarrow Moen's cold gaze swept over Yarrow Jun Ting and she immediately went forward to help him up. You are now His Majesty's consort, a monarch, so you naturally can accept this father's salute. All right, let's not talk anymore. Father still has important matters to attend to, so let Yarrow Tu accompany you. After Yarrow Jun Ting gave Yarrow Tu a few instructions, he turned and went to the study. Steward Yarrow, why don't I see Di mother? Yarrow Moen swept her gaze over the people who had come to receive her but didn't see Do Xianglan's figure. Consort Yarrow doesn't know, but eldest madam caught a cold a few days ago. Although the doctor has prescribed medicine, She hasn't gotten any better. These past 2 days, she's been so weak that she can't even get out of bed, reported Yarrow 2 truthfully with a slightly sorrowful expression. Is that so? This consort wants to go take a look. Yarrow Moen knew that Yarrow 2 knew everything, yet he didn't expose this matter, nor did he stop it. He even reported it to her father. She would remember this kindness. Older sister, Yua doesn't like eldest madam. Yua can bring you to see Nyang Chin, alright? Nyang Chin really wants to see older sister Wana. When Do Xianglan was mentioned, Yarrow Yu's face was filled with undisguised disgust. Chapter 74. This old servant kowtows in salute to consort Yarrow. When wet nurse Chen saw Yarrow Mo Wan, she naturally bowed respectfully. Then when she saw Liu Xing behind Yarrow Mo Wan, she nodded firmly. Get up. Wan hates it when people kneel. Yarrow Mo Wan took a step forward and supported wet nurse Chen with both hands. Her eyes shone with a profound light. Unfortunately, wet nurse Chen didn't understand the gratitude in Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes because from start to finish, wet nurse Chen had thought that everything was Liu Xing's idea. This old servant will leave. Wet nurse Chen's fingers were slightly flustered. Once wet nurse Chen left, Yarrow Mo Wan reflexively glanced at Liu Xing. Liu Xing understood and silently left Bamboo Wish Pavilion. When the door opened, Yu Ji, who had been guarding the bed, couldn't help but turn around to see Yarrow Mo Wan walk in. Yarrow Mo Wan? How did you get in? Yu Ji looked at Yarrow Mo Wan in realization and couldn't help but look behind her. When she saw that Yi Junqing hadn't followed her, her heart calmed down a bit. Yu Ji, you're too brazen. How could you directly call Guifei by her name? Hurry and greet her. Yarrow 2 immediately reprimanded Yu Ji for being disrespectful. There's no need. Steward Yarrow, Wan is a little hungry. Can you let Yu Ji help Wan make her signature sweet and sour fish? Yarrow Moen blinked as she looked towards Yarrow 2, acting coquettishly. Yu Ji, didn't you hear consort Yarrow's orders? Hurry and go. Yarrow 2 sternly berated Yu Ji. But eldest madam still hasn't woken up. Yu Ji looked towards Do Xianglan who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Yu Ji must be afraid that no one will give Di mother water after she wakes up. Then Wan will stay. Yu Ji, hurry and go, Wan's really hungry. As Yarrow Mo Wan spoke, she walked to the side of the bed and pushed Yu Ji to the door. Although Yu Ji was unwilling, when she saw Yarrow 2's dark expression, she could only leave Bamboo Wish Pavilion. The moment the door closed, Yarrow Mo Wan slowly turned around. The innocence and gentleness in her eyes had been replaced by coldness. Looking at Do Xianglan who was sleeping soundly on the bed, Yarrow Mo Wan lazily leaned against the railing of the bed and the corners of her lips slightly curved. Yu Ji, water. Do Xianglan called out to Yu Ji in a trance. She raised her skinny and withered hand blankly until she took the teacup that was still warm. Yu Ji, in a bit, go to the Imperial Palace and tell Sulwan to come back. I don't know why, but I've been dreaming about her these past 2 days. Do Xianglan drank the water with difficulty and handed the teacup back to the person beside her. Di mother and Wan really have a telepathic connection. Wan has been dreaming about Di mother these days. Today, she came to see Di mother early in the morning. Isn't Wan more filial than second sister? Yarrow Mo Wan's charming eyes looked towards Do Xianglan with a smile on her lips. How could it be you? Who let you in? When Do Xianglan heard this, she was shocked to see that Yarrow Mo Wan was sitting next to her. Yarrow Mo Wan was still holding the teacup she had just handed over. Of course it was Wana who came in. Di mother has forgotten, Wana is now Yarrow Fei. How could Yu Ji dare to block Wana? Yarrow Moen slowly got up and walked over, placing the teacup on the table. Get out. I don't want to see you. Do Xianglan glared at Yarrow Moen. Her expression was fierce and her eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Even with the identity of Yarrow Fei, Do Xianglan was still so domineering. It wasn't hard for Yarrow Moen to imagine how much her younger sister had suffered. Yarrow Moen was speechless. Yarrow Moen pursed her lips and walked back to the bed. While Do Xianglan was completely unprepared, she fiercely slapped her. You actually dared to hit me. Do Xianglan covered her burning face and glared at Yarrow Moen. That's right, Wanna did hit me. His Majesty said that Wanna is not the same as before. His Majesty said that Wanna is not the same as before. His status is respected, and if anyone dares to be disrespectful to Wanna, they should be hit. Yarrow Moen said lightly, the light in her eyes harmless. Yuji. Someone come. Cough cough cough. Do Xianglan was so angry that she wanted to call Yuji to chase Yarrow Moen out. However, she only managed to call out twice before she felt her chest tighten and started coughing. Why is Di Mother so angry? Wanna is just an idiot. Could it be that he would eat you? Yarrow Moen got closer and closer to Do Xianglan, the smile on her lips growing. Go away. Cough cough. Cough cough cough. Do Xianglan coughed more and more until she coughed up blood. Looking at the small pool of blood on her palm, Do Xianglan's eyes were filled with shock. She had just caught a cold, how could it be so serious? Aya. Di Mother's illness isn't light. Wanna has heard that when one coughs up blood, it means that they don't have long to live. But Di Mother, don't worry, Wanna's mother, older sister, and nephew are all waiting down there. Di Mother definitely won't be lonely down there. Yarrow Moen wore an innocent face, but her smile was dark and sinister. What nonsense are you spouting? Quickly get out. Yuji. Do Xianglan wanted to get off the bed but was pushed back by Yarrow Moen. Di Mother is already this sick. If you have anything to say, just tell Wanna. Why do you have to get off the bed yourself? Yarrow Moen's clear eyes flickered, like the sparkling surface of a lake in autumn, dazzling people. What are you doing? Don't think that just because you're Yarrow Fei you can act tyrannically. Your second sister is the Imperial Gui Fei. Get out right now. Otherwise. Cough cough cough. Do Xianglan didn't know that the angrier she got, the faster she would die. Imperial Gui Fei? Wanna only knows that His Majesty dotes on Wanna. Even if Wanna deliberately used the cat to scratch second sister's hand and deliberately pushed the responsibility of pushing Chen Fei into the water onto second sister, His Majesty still dotes on Wanna. It really makes people feel extremely helpless. Yarrow Moen laughed heartlessly, her eyes bursting with an unbridled cold light. You did it on purpose. Aren't you stupid? Do Xianglan looked at Yarrow Moen in astonishment, her eyes filled with shock. The person standing in front of her was clearly that idiot, but why did it seem like a completely different person? Chapter 75. Di Mother, please don't get angry. Otherwise, the poison will attack your heart and you might die at any moment. If you don't see your precious daughter one last time, would you really bear to close your eyes? Yarrow Moen smiled sinisterly. Not so long ago, she never knew that she had such a sinister side. It turns out that people really can't be forced. Poison. Poison. Do Xianglan stared at Yarrow Moen and roared angrily, but her voice gradually became weaker. Why is Di Mother so shocked? Wan is just giving you a taste of your own medicine. How did you instruct Gao Momo to poison my mother's food? When you found out that eldest sister had died, how did you put mother to death? Have you forgotten? That shouldn't be. How long has it been? Yarrow Moen coldly sneered at the deathly pale Do Xianglan on the bed. After so long, she finally felt a trace of comfort in her heart. You're such a vicious bastard. Cough cough. Sulwan. My Sulwan. Do Xianglan desperately coughed as if she wanted to cough out her heart and lungs. In your eyes, besides Yarrow Sulwan, everyone else is a bastard. Then do you know that in father's eyes, isn't your daughter also a bastard? If one day she falls from the position of Imperial Gui Fei, do you believe that father would feel disgusted just by looking at her? Do you know why? Because she has a shameless mother. That day at Yun de Lu, when you and Lu Yusin were in ecstasy, father was standing outside, a dignified prime minister. Seeing his own wife fooling around with other people, he didn't even have the courage to charge in. Tell me, Isn't it very painful for him? Yarrow Mo Wn raised her lips and smiled, her eyes shooting out an undisguised light. It's you, you're the one who told. Do Xianglan's face was deathly white and her body couldn't stop trembling from anger. Yarrow Mo Wn ignored Do Xianglan's question and continued, as for being vicious, compared to you mother and daughter, Wn is still inferior. Now that I think about it, letting Gao Momo die was too easy. Yarrow Mo Wn shook her head in annoyance. Gao Momo, you wrongly accused her. Do Xianglan felt as if there was a huge rock pressing down on her chest. She desperately sucked in air, but it still wasn't enough. Wrongly accuse me. Compared to the heartless things she did, it's already her good fortune to be able to die so easily. Yarrow Moen snorted disdainfully. Yarrow Mo Wn, I will kill you. Kill you. Cough cough cough. Cough cough. Do Xianglan was so agitated that she wanted to reach out to strangle Yarrow Mo Wan's neck, but Yarrow Mo Wn grabbed her wrist and fiercely slammed it against the side of the bed. The force was so strong that the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Do Xianglan, you hate Ben Gong now, don't you? You wish for nothing more than to hack me into pieces. Then you should know how much hatred I felt when I saw my mother being poisoned to death by you. This empress is truly unwilling to poison you to death like this. But it doesn't matter, don't you still have a daughter? Yarrow Moen's cold eyes were bloodshot as she took a deep breath and revealed an extremely harmless smile. You. What do you want? You're not allowed to harm Su Luan. Cough cough. The poison attacked her heart and Do Xianglan's mouth was full of blood. She looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan in fear. At this moment, she finally saw clearly that the Yarrow Mo Wan in front of her was no longer that idiot that she could casually scold. The light that shot out of those eyes was incomparably sharp and seemed familiar. Yarrow Mo Shin. You. Who exactly are you? Do Xianglan was overwhelmed by her own discovery. Her body trembled even more violently and blood flowed out of her mouth. Gao Momo also asked Ben Gong this question before she died. Don't worry. As long as you go to hell, Gao Momo will naturally tell you. When Yarrow Mo Wn felt Do Xianglan's body spasm, she let out a light breath and released Do Xianglan's wrist. She slowly straightened her body. You. Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off. Cough cough cough. Do Xianglan's pupils constricted and she covered her mouth with both hands. Large mouthfuls of blood flowed through the gaps between her fingers and onto the brocade quilt, soaking it. This sentence is so familiar. Di mother, don't worry. Not long later, Ben Gong will naturally send second older sister to reunite with you. Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips curled up. The smile on her face was like a dark flower that bloomed in hell, beautiful and dazzling. Do Xianglan finally stopped breathing in endless hatred. Yarrow Mo Wn only smiled disdainfully when she saw those eyes that were as wide as copper bells, then turned and left indifferently. When Yarrow Mo Wn walked into Quiet Snow Pavilion, Su Muzi was playing with the pastries on the table. She wouldn't even let Yarrow you eat a piece if he wanted to. This is prepared for your older sister Wn. You're not allowed to touch it. When Yarrow Mo Wn saw Su Muzi pat Yarrow Yu's little hand, she finally couldn't help but step forward. Just let you eat a piece. How could Wn eat so much? As Yarrow Mo Wn spoke, she took a piece of pastry from the table and handed it to Yarrow Yu. This commoner woman kowtows in salute to Consort Yarrow Niang Niang. Consort Yarrow Niang Niang is blessed with good fortune and peace. When Su Muzi saw Yarrow Moen walk in, she immediately knelt on both knees and saluted respectfully. What is Third Inyang doing? Hurry and get up. Wan really doesn't like you guys kneeling here and there. In the future, if you continue to kneel when you see Wn, then Wn won't come anymore. Yarrow Mo Wn bent down to help Su Muzi up. At the side, Yarrow Yu also helped his mother up. Mother, older sister Wn is the best. Older sister Wn was the one who told Yu those methods to deal with bad people. Mother, Yu wants to take out the snow honey that uncle gave us and give it to Yu. Su Muzi abruptly stopped Yarrow Yu's words, but it also caused Yarrow Mo Wan to tremble. Su Muzi was so nervous that she clearly didn't want Yu to continue speaking. Moreover, You seem to have mentioned the word uncle just now. This pastry is made with snow honey. Consort Yarrow, have a taste. It's fresh and sweet. Su Muzi realized that she had lost her composure, so she immediately changed the topic and invited Yarrow Mo Wn to sit. Chapter 76. Just as the three of them were chatting, they suddenly heard hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Following that, the door to the room opened and Uya, who was serving Su Muzi, rushed in without even knocking. Madam, this is great. First Madam is dead. Uya was so excited that she didn't notice Yarrow Mo Wn sitting on the side. Shut up. What nonsense are you saying? Su Muzi abruptly stood up and angrily rebuked Uya. At this moment, Uya finally noticed that there was an extra person in the room and her mood instantly changed. Replying, Madam. It's bad, First Madam passed away. Even though she knew Yarrow Mo Wan's intelligence wasn't like a normal person's, Uya still regretted being too rash. If what she said just now reached Master's mouth, it would probably cause trouble for Third Madam again. It was better when I went to pay my respects this morning. How come? Does Master know? Su Muzi furrowed her brows and asked worriedly. Seeing the worry on Su Muzi's face, Yarrow Mo Wn couldn't help but sigh. This person lived too cautiously, so cautiously that it made one's heart ache. Such a despicable person should be cheering loudly when she died. Master has already gone to Bamboo Wish Pavilion. I heard that Imperial Gui Fei is also on the way back and should be here soon. Uya said truthfully. Quickly bring me some plain clothes. When she heard the three words Imperial Gui Fei, Su Muzi's face clearly became more nervous. Yarrow Mo Wn stood up and walked towards Uya. Di mother really died? Yarrow Mo Wn looked towards Uya suspiciously. Replying Consort Yarrow Niang, the doctor said that First Madam has passed away. Uya understood the etiquette between master and servant. Moreover, the person in front of her was a Gui Fei, so she couldn't neglect it. Di mother treats Wn so well, Wn has to go see her. Yarrow Mo Wn found an excuse and walked out of Quiet Snow Pavilion first. Seeing Yarrow Mo Wan's departing figure, Uya couldn't help but sigh. Back then, First Madam frequently locked Third Miss in the firewood room, beating and scolding her. It's rare that Third Miss doesn't hold a grudge. What nonsense are you saying? Quickly help me change my clothes. If I'm late, I'm afraid it'll attract criticism. Su Muzi urged on the side. Uya immediately turned and walked towards her master. Outside Quiet Snow Pavilion, Liu Xingting and Marquis Yu immediately went up when she saw Yarrow Mo Wan. Where is Wet Nurse Chen? Replying Master, this servant has already given her 1,000 taels of silver and sent someone to escort her out of the city. Now, it is time for her to leave the Imperial City. Don't worry, Your Highness. Liu Xing said in a low voice. How are things at Bamboo Wish Pavilion? Yarrow Moan turned to look towards Ting Yu. Not even 5 minutes after her ladyship left, Yuji returned to Bamboo Wish Pavilion. Perhaps because she saw First Madam's abnormality, she ran out in a panic to find a physician. At this time, Master has already gone to Bamboo Wish Pavilion and sent someone to inform the Imperial Gui Fei. In a little while, the Imperial Gui Fei will arrive, Ting Yu reported truthfully. I'm going to Bamboo Wish Cottage to send her off one last time. Her ghost probably wants to see me. She walked towards Bamboo Wish Pavilion. Liu Xingting and Yu Yu looked at each other in dismay before following. Before entering Bamboo Wish Pavilion, Yarrow Moan could already hear Yuji's uncontrollable sobbing. She had to admit that even though everyone in the residence hated Do Xianglan, she still handed Yuji over. Steward Yarrow, Di mother, is she really dead? Yarrow Moan paused in front of the arched door before walking in anxiously. Replying Consort Yarrow Niang, First Madam has unfortunately passed away. Please don't be too sad, otherwise it might harm your phoenix body, consoled Yarrow Tu sorrowfully. Yarrow Moan suddenly realized that Yarrow Tu's acting skills were not inferior to hers. Wan wants to go take a look. When Yarrow Moan heard this, she walked over. When she stepped into the room, she saw Yarrow Enchanting sitting solemnly by the table with a grave expression. Yuji was kneeling by the side of the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Meanwhile, the main character was lying on the bed like a corpse in a sorry state. The corners of her lips, inner garments, embroidered blankets, and satin mattress were all stained with blood. Yarrow Moen was shocked that Yarrow Enchanting hadn't dealt with it. However, this was just as she had hoped. She believed that Yarrow Sulwan would definitely like this great gift she had prepared for her. Father, mother, so terrifying. Yarrow Moen gathered her emotions and then jogged over to Yarrow Enchanting's side. She looked towards Do Xianglan apprehensively. When Yuji heard this, she abruptly turned and glared fiercely at Yarrow Moen with her eyes that were swollen from crying. Yarrow Moen was thinking that if it wasn't because of her identity, she would definitely pounce on her and strangle her to death. And this person she called father beside her might not even make a sound. At this moment, Yarrow Moen finally understood why Yi Hongyi longed for imperial power, longed for the throne. It was because the feeling of having power and influence was truly indescribably good. Mother! Mother! Right at this time, Yarrow Sulwan rushed in without any warning. When she saw Do Xianglan's miserable death, tears gushed out. She immediately threw herself in front of the bed and hugged Do Xianglan's body with both hands as she wailed hysterically. Mother! How could it be like this? How could you leave your daughter alone? Yarrow Sulwan wailed in grief, tears rolling down her cheeks. Behind her, Cai Ying wiped her tears and walked forward to carefully support Yarrow Sulwan. Niang, your health is important. You're pregnant with dragon seed, advised Cai Ying worriedly. At the side, Yarrow Moen clearly felt Yarrow Enchanting's body shake. Sulwan, the dead can't come back to life. No matter how sad you are, Xianglan won't be able to come back to life. Yarrow Enchanting choked with sobs as he looked towards Yarrow Sulwan sorrowfully. Yarrow Moen suddenly really wanted to laugh. This was his father. She really didn't know how he managed to hold himself back from vomiting when he said the two words Xianglan. Yuji. What exactly happened? Ben Gong hasn't seen mother for a few days. How could she be this ill? Yarrow Sulwan abruptly stood up and looked towards Yuji furiously. Her scarlet eyes looked like they wanted to eat someone. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.